On the agenda tonight, start right on time. The public hearing, which starts now, is only on the three ordinances. And Mr. Walton's going to give a brief explanation of each of them, and then we'll take comments.
This microphone on. You hear me? Okay. I will yell very loud. I'm going to speak very quickly about each ordinance. First one is ordinance 548. That ordinance is in an effort to eliminate the practice of creating orphan parcels. Basically, there are instances in the recent past where a developer will subdivide off unsuitable land and create a lot that's just wetland. And the lot will never be constructed, it functionally has no value. And so ultimately it doesn't need to be maintained. And the likelihood is that the orphan land, it's just a wetland or an unusable parcel, would put into a corporation or an LLC. Corporation is going to then go defunct. And then at the end of the day, we will end up having to deal with that part. And so this ordinance is designed to stop that practice in a few ways. First, it creates a lot frontage requirement, something that we've not had in the past. Second, change the definition of a lot. And third, it adds a 20% requirement. The 20% requirement has been the subject of some discussion with the Planning Commission and with my office. There have been two changes to that section since the ordinance's introduction. The Planning Commission added that they wanted the aggregate usable non-wetland area to be at least 20%, so there were no pockets created. That was first. Second, we altered the first sentence just a little bit to make sure that it was clear that you could still use the property, but this applies just for subdivision or adding additional lots. I have provided for council an exemption. It did not make it into the written ordinance, but I think it's important. That's on your chairs I've provided there. It basically amends the proposal for a floor amendment to change section 8 of the ordinance. And I propose it should read, the ordinance shall become effectively upon its adoption by city council. The foregoing notwithstanding, any application submitted prior to the introduction of this ordinance that is complete and found acceptable upon review by the city of Newcastle shall be exempt from application of this ordinance. Basically, the reason for that is there's at least one project where their application is pretty far along. It would likely have a vested right anyway to continue. I was trying to avoid litigation over that particular issue. So that's the reason I proposed the floor amendment. The other two ordinances are relatively straightforward. Ordinance 550, that ordinance is a temporary moratorium that will last until December of next year on multifamily units with more than 15 structures, or 15 units, pardon me. It's relatively, it says what it says. Moratoriums are always, can be controversial, but it's not illegal to do so. But we're going to have a lot of study and a lot of work to do in order to go through the hearings if you pass this moratorium and to get it to where it needs to go, because there's a lot of requirements. The last ordinance, 551, that is a tax exemption for resident firefighters, and it includes the ladies' auxiliary, $500, $900 per household potential benefit for that. So I introduced the ordinances. Unless there's any questions, we'll open it up to public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walton. Okay, the usual rules apply to public comments. Each person gets 3 minutes. Please sign in. The sheet should be on the podium. State your name and address, and please try to speak into the microphone because that way everyone can hear you. Thank you. Any comments on any of these three ordinances? There'll be a separate public comment period later for other things, but for now, it's just these three ordinances.
You have a public comment, as long as they relate to these three ordinances.
Nice. More important, I get up here. Tell me this.
Well, after 3 weeks of sailing on the Trinidad, I'm back. So I'm gonna be focusing on agenda items that are up now. As far as ordinance 548,
Excuse me, would you state your name, please?
thank you. Philip Gross, 1301 13th Street. As far as 548, I've attended all the meetings, and what Mac, their city solicitor, said is right on point. So the important thing is that the ordinance states that the builder or contractor is not gonna pawn off like they have been, those parcels, and try and do something with it where it just sits and, like with projects by the liquor store and by the Garrison, they've already done that. As far as 550, the moratorium on large apartment structures, I feel is way inadequate. There's no way that 15-unit complex that you would approve, or the planning commission would approve, is stifling anything with the overcrowding and potential issues with the city. So I asked the council cut it down to no more than 10 units, which I think is way reasonable of a compromise. As far as the 551, I firmly believe they serve us, we need to serve them. And I think that's the least that city council, residents, and everybody can do to show our appreciation for their commitment and service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's a start. Thank you very much. It's a start, man. I appreciate the place been out of control for a very long time. Mr. Berkshire, snagging going on. This is a start. Thank you. I don't know what kind of problems we have, ordinance 550. I mean, I work 12.5 hours a day trying to keep up with everything. I don't see where it's such a, place. Which, well, I'll research it. And again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Been needed for a very long time, at least it's start.
Hi, my name is Amanda Rhodes. I just wanted to speak out regarding the ordinance 550. I would just like for you all to consider the fact that this could be discriminatory towards people of color, low income individuals as well. Accessibility into our city should really be considered as far as the local businesses go and bringing in new people into the city. And I also just want you guys to consider the fact that when it relates to these large apartment structures or moratoriums on them, that we aren't really considering the housing crisis in Delaware. The fact that we have had some situations recently with unhoused individuals in Newcastle properties and things like that. So that is something that is impacting our area as well. So I just want you all to consider that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Transport. 548, 549, right? I'm delighted that, Councilman Nakane is thinking of a moratorium.
Excuse me, I don't think very many people can hear you, perhaps.
Not all.
Is your mic not on?
Well,
All right, wait a minute, Ms. Lear will help. Oh, okay. That's it. Yeah, now it's on. Thank
And
you.
I have not signed up because I couldn't. Okay, you can hear me now. As I started to say, I'm delighted that Councilman Mataway has brought up the prospect of a moratorium because we have not been considering what we ought to do. We need time to look at it. And so thank you, Mr. Mataway. And as for 50 by 50, I have, when I was a trustee, I was on a committee for the Goodwill Fire Company. I think what they do is absolutely splendid. And I've been disappointed for years because people in this town, and many of them, people with, who are very well off, I understood when I was on, had not been contributing yearly to the Goodwill Fire Company. So I'm delighted that anything that helps the people who are working for it will have something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments on these three ordinances? Okay, well, we still have to wait till 7 to start the regular public meeting. So we have a 5-minute break. Or if anybody else comes in and wants to comment, then they can comment. I'm just going to officially close. Don't we have to wait till 7? No?
Yes, wait.
Yeah, okay. Officially close the public hearing, and then at 7, we'll start the regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Suzanne Souter,
Here.
Councilperson Joseph Day,
Here.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka.
Here.
Councilperson Andrew Zell,
Here.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Here.
Also present, Mayor Valerie Leary, City Administrator Antonina Tantillo, City Treasurer James Wisman, City Solicitor Max Walton, Chief of Police Richard McCabe, Building Official Jeffrey Bergstrom, and City Planner Chris Rogers.
Thank you. Okay, if you look at the agenda, you see we're starting with a report from DelDOT about the work on the railroad crossing on Delaware Street. And so I'm going to introduce and turn over to Mr. John Irmes.
Thank you. My name is John Hermes. I work for Century Engineering. We're the consulting firm for DelDOT's railroad section. So.
Thank you. What we'd like to do today is provide an update of this crossing. This crossing improvement project's been around for several years, and it's been paused on different occasions. DelDOT is very committed to getting this done, and they've found a path forward to getting some of the process. So what we wanted to do is provide information on how they're going forward, the work that's being done, just to confirm. Overall, the work is pretty much what it was when we were at the last council meeting back in February. So not much has changed from that, but how they're doing it is the key thing. What DelDOT has done is decided to break this project into 3 phases. And the advantage of having 3 phases is the fact that they can fund it and they can get some certain parts of it done a little bit earlier. The first phase is something that you probably won't notice too much. If you're driving up and down on 273 with all the schools, you see the overhead school zone lights. Those are antiquated. DelDOT doesn't even stock the parts to fix them anymore. As part of this project, we're going to go ahead and replace those bases on the ground. They're actually been in, if you've seen some construction in there, there's some meters. So that school zone is phase 1. That's fully been paid for and should be completed by the end of this year. It will not impact any of your traveling. The only thing that you'll notice is when you do come by in, say, 3 months, those flashing lights will be on the side of the road instead of above and overhead on wires. This is also a safety issue for DelDOT. Then they don't need to get in the middle of the road, stop traffic to fix it. So that is the first phase. It's actually going to be done soon. The second phase is a little bit more impactful. It is the traffic signals. So at the intersection, Walgreens, Portofino's, all the signal equipment at that intersection was scheduled to be improved, and it hasn't been improved since the start of this project because it kept waiting for the project to happen. It's outdated, it's had a lot of repairs to it. So what DelDOT went ahead and did is pulled the signal work. So phase 2 is just the signal work at that location. So that's kind of up in the center, the black poles that you see on there. DelDOT will be replacing, again, the wires that go across the road are called span wires. DelDOT will be removing those and putting on mast arms. Those are the poles that come from the ground and stick out over the roadway, kind of an L shape. So those will be going in. It's hard to see on that display, but they will be the black lines, the L-shaped items up on there. We are not changing any lane assignments. We're not changing how the signal activates or works. Everything will remain the same. We're just updating all the equipment to modern style. The poles themselves will be black. They won't be the stainless steel. They will be black painted to blend in with the area. The one other improvement that you'll see out there will be on the, where there's a crosswalk today. We're gonna be making some improvements. If you've ever gone to use that crosswalk, the push buttons are far away. They don't meet current standards, so we're gonna be upgrading that as part of this work. What happens when, for impacts to you guys, when you're traveling, you might see some lane closures when they're doing the poles. The poles themselves are 45+ feet long. So there might be some lanes that need to be shut down during the work, but overall, it will not have much impact on your daily commutes. DelDOT has already designed this. It's gone through their process. They've ordered the poles. They've already spent the money to get them in. The poles are a 12 to 18 week lead time. So that's why they wanted to get them ordered as soon as possible. That puts this project construction March. That's my best guess as of right now, spring of next year. So it might be a little bit later, a little bit earlier, depending when the poles and the other equipment comes in, but the plans are done. The two things that we do still need to get to have this constructed, one is there's a piece of property that the city owns over by the EV charging station. There's some parking spots over there on that corner. We might need a town agreement because some of the signal work might be right on that property. And there's also an easement with the shopping center that we're currently acquiring. So there's a couple of little things, but overall, that project is going forward. And again, that was the advantage of breaking it up into the 3 phases because this work can happen. The third one, that's the big part. We call that the railroad improvements. Not much has changed from what we originally stated, but we still are coordinating with NS, and that's taking a long time. NS is Norfolk Southern, that's the railroad. What we're still planning to do is at 8th Street, we're going to close 8th Street's access like we've shown at the previous meetings. The railroad company will come in, put brand new signals and gates. They will be repaving the roadway. They're not going to reconstruct and remove the crossing like one time. They're just going to be milling and overlaying. So they're going to take off like the top 2 inches and then put that right back. So that minimizes the impacts. We're not going to need a full closure and a detour like we had discussed at one point. It's going to be a much shorter duration and have much less impact. The other thing that was approved at the last council meeting that we came in was the realignment of the entrance in at Delaware Street when you come in. Right now, when you come in, it's a straight shot, and that has caused some concern. Some people that aren't familiar with the area, when maybe a box truck driver or something, they get into the downtown and they get stuck. They don't know what to do. So what was planned and approved by Womatco, you can see on the bottom, there's a little bit of a green bump. So we're going to be slightly realigning Delaware Street when it comes in. It's not closing any lanes. You're not losing any access. The driveways still are maintained. But what that does is that allows the people who are traveling through to the Delaware Memorial Bridge and elsewhere, it gives them the idea that the main road goes around the curve and not straight into the city. The other thing that we're able to do with this is this allows us to put a pedestrian crossing into that island. Right now, you can't cross the street. There's no location that you can safely cross. But here we'll have like signals that will allow you to go from the south side of the street to the north, and then to the, again, I always call it the Portofino access, Portofino shopping center. I might say Happy Harry's too, but that's. But that is one of the key components of this improvement, is to make sure that the pedestrians are accounted for. This will also allow, when you go in right now on Delaware Street, you have the delineators protecting the shoulder. This will help protect that because it will actually be a curb and a sidewalk. So you don't need to have those delineators. So all those are components of the improvements. What I will say is for open, there's still discussion. Nothing's been finalized for what's gonna happen. As you're coming in today, the City of Newcastle sign is on the island. It's the brick island. All the brick we can give back to the city, but that island is basically where the roadway will be, the new roadway will be. So that area below there that we show in green on the display, we can't read it, but it says gateway area. That's whatever the city wants to make it. It's not been determined yet, whether we put the sign back, whether we put lighting, landscaping, whatever. Those are just areas that we can now use for additional landscaping to relocate from that area. Big question, when is this gonna happen? So as I said, we're still coordinating with the railroad. We do not have the final cost for that, so DelDOT does not have all the construction funding yet. But they're, like I said, they've already committed to the first 2 phases, so this will help keep everything moving. We are looking for summer of 25, which is a year later than we originally planned, but that's our time frame right now. Originally, we wanted to do this type of work when the schools weren't in session, just to minimize the impact to the schools. But now that we're not closing the road fully, we might be able to do it some other times. What impact will it have to you when you're driving? Because of the curb line changes, the improvements to the sidewalks, we are gonna have to close lanes. You're gonna have some lane and shoulder closures during the work hours. The biggest impact will be to Delaware Street coming in. Is, as I said, you will no longer be able to go straight. So as we're recreating that, we're gonna have to detour the main road. Is there a chance you could go up to the light and just make a right? Possibly, but what we want to catch is the majority of people beforehand. So we are actively working on detour plans that would catch people, say, direct them down Washington Street to 6th, Washington to South to 6th. Once we have those laid out, we'll be getting with the chief police and the city and saying, make sure that this is how we want to go, and we will be publicizing those detours. But it will not be an overly long detour just to accommodate that. Any other highlights? And the whole, the whole roadway would be overlaid, I said, at the railroad crossing. But again, from the whole, because we're switching a little bit where the travel lanes are, and we're not reducing any, we're not taking any away. You'll still have you'll have a bike lane and 2 lanes, turn lanes. We do need to repave that whole intersection, and I think that will probably be the most impactful time, because we'll probably have to do that at night, just because of how busy the intersection is. But the darker gray area is the area that will have a new pavement applied to it. I thank you for letting me have the opportunity to provide an update. You'd like that. However, you'd like to proceed now.
Okay, I have one question. I understand, and Mr. Bergstrom can provide more detailed response than I can, but I understand there's some drainage issues around the railroad crossing, and I wonder if there are plans to address that.
Correct. The railroad crossing itself is not going to be addressed, so we are not going to be touching the drainage pipes that go under the railroad or along the railroad themselves. That was one-time part of the project, but that significantly added time and cost and complication with the railroad, so that part was removed. The existing drainage system there does work. However, when it gets to the outfall is meaning where the water comes out. Drainage for that is actually behind the Walgreens. So that pipe tends to get blocked up. I think that's the case right now. We have been in communication with Norfolk Southern, as has the city. And we've talked to the local guy. They do plan on getting a crew out there. They said after Thanksgiving was the earliest that they can get it. And if they can't do anything then they will let us know. As of right now, DelDOT has no more authority than the city to go back there and clean the ditch out. But the good news was the local guy did respond to us when we asked about it, and they recognized the fact that the city had made requests as well. So it's something that we're gonna keep an eye on, and it's not directly related to this project, but we still wanna pressure them to
Well,
get it
we're
done.
digging up around there, because I understand it also sometimes causes a problem with the storm drain there on the edge of the shopping center, because everything backs up. And then the drain doesn't function properly.
Correct, yes. And there's discussion, you can probably make arguments on whose water and who controls it, but there is no definitive agreement related to that, and that's part of if three entities draining into the same pipe and who wants to maintain.
So in
it.
other words, I think I understand you to say you're working with Norfolk Southern to try to get them to at least do something, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and the long-term maintenance of it, I think originally how, and Jeff, you can correct me if I misspeak, but I think the original plan was for the water to be collected in here, the outfall to go onto the railroad tracks, and then head north up the tracks to the creek, to the marsh area. And over time, that just gets silted in and blocked up. And, you know, the railroad is concerned with moving trains.
Any questions from other members of council?
So one question, thank you, Council President. Thank you for your presentation. It's definitely going to impact the city in a positive way. In respect to phase 3, you said summer 2025. Is that for start and completion?
Yes, we're looking at right now about a 45-day timeframe. As it looks right now, we don't have the exact dates and schedule computed yet. And if we can get some things in early, we might be able to do that. So in other words, if we can do the crossing, if we can do some of the work on 8th Street ahead of time, that reduces the delays. And we might be able to work extended hours, for example, on Delaware Street connection and get that in. So, but in general, we'd be looking at roughly 45 days, and the start time as of right now is the summer. Again, if the city wants to talk about that, and the original timeframe last discussions was make sure that it's after the July 4th celebration, and that gave us the window, but the window before was only a 3-week work period. Because everything was going to be done under full closure and at night.
Thank you. And then just one quick follow-up to that. We totally respect everyone's very busy. There's going to be delays outside of people's control. Summer 2025, can you confirm, or do you wholeheartedly believe that this project will be completed by the end of 2025 at least? To feel comfortable?
I feel comfortable right now saying that as of everything I know, 2025 everything should be completed by then. I will say we do not have a signed agreement with Norfolk Southern yet. Norfolk Southern says it takes them 6 months once they get their signal design approved. So that could be, if that drags out 6 months, then we're pushing it. But DelDOT, and that's why we wanted to bring, DelDOT wanted us to come here, is because DelDOT's already committed to the first 2 phases. The first 2 phases are around 600, 700,000, I think. So they've already, or they're going to be spending a big chunk of money, and they don't want to just stop. So, and I will say one other thing, I'm sorry. The signals that are out there now, it's called preemption. It's tied into the railroad crossing. So when the railroad train comes, the light turns green to allow traffic to go so it doesn't get backed up. That system will be upgraded. So that's why it's critical that you upgrade the traffic signal and you upgrade the railroad signals at the same time. So it's you can't just leave one component without the other. And the ADA group has already told us that you can make the one change, but you need to do all the changes at some point. So there's other components that are pushing us to get this done. Hopefully we get the agreements.
Thank you for coming and presenting this. Definitely looking forward for these improvements. I have 3 questions. I'll start with funding just because we're talking about it right now. My understanding is the gateway area that you were talking about in the phase 3, that will be funded out of state funds, not railroad agreement. So basically, about timeline, would we basically know a year before in summer, June 30th, passing by, legislative session, is that when we can kind of have a signal of whether something has been added to, DelDOT's, approved money, because you have phase 1 and 2 approved and have funding for it, but phase 3 does not. Is that okay logic there?
Phase 3, yeah, that area is not out of the railroad pot, but yes, it's out of DelDOT's pot.
Mhm.
So we don't know for sure. A lot of this money will be coming from open end funds, so it's not a dedicated project any longer, because we're adding to existing work orders. So I don't know how Delta is gonna recognize it in their budget, whether it's actually gonna be something like a line item in the bond bill, or whether it'll be, for example, Delta's traffic section gets X number of millions dollars and they pull it from there.
I see.
So
Thank you. The other ones are, one is about the, you were talking about the upgraded poles will have better accessibility. And one in particular is the one on the side of Portofino and Walgreens where, pavement and, patchy area, you have to kind of, and I'm a parent, so I have to leave a stroller over here and then walk over, press a button. Question, you mentioned the poles are not being moved. So what's happening with the area? Is that gonna be just paved and crosswalk is gonna be extended or moved, or how is that handling? Are you moving the pole closer to the crossing? Just curious.
the pole in its ultimate location will be closer to the crossing, and so will the push button.
Thank you. And the last question is around a crosswalk. In one of our meetings with DelDOT, I asked whether we can look into if anybody here on the map sees, the intersection. I recommended that we look into Newark's example where they have, kind of diagonal crossing from all ends. So currently you would have to cross from Gateway area over to the restaurant and cross there. So I was suggesting kind of X crosswalk potentially. Have you guys looked into that? What is that adding to, lights and all that stuff, kind of positive traffic? Just curious. Has that been discussed?
Hasn't been discussed in detail. We did look at the locations of the crosswalks. The diagonal creates a lot of issue because of the delay and amount of time. And this is a busy intersection and the light phases are critical. Even though that does make sense, in Newark, you have the volumes of people that are much higher than it's going to be here. So,
Absolutely.
but yes, I can bring it up again, but our initial thought was meeting with ADA. It's how they showed the 3 locations. They didn't want a 4th leg. Usually we try and what's called box it out and do all 4. And here we did the 3 just because of the added delay and conflicts movements.
Thank you. For sure.
Thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. You talked about the sign coming in is going to be removed. How is that going to be addressed? Because that's our major sign coming in and introducing people to the town.
We can put some of the work into the contract. Like if we want, if that exact sign just wants to be relocated, we feel we can put that into DelDOT's contract and DelDOT's contractor can do it. However, the angle of things can be slightly different. This gateway could potentially be used to provide access for the people that are making the lefts in. Right now, the sign is very difficult for visibility in there. So it allows the city the opportunity to provide additional or new signs, and also do some lighting and other things there. So as of right now, those are things that we can be discussed. There are topics and items that can be included in DelDOT's contract. However, DelDOT's not going to do it all. If you wanted, there are limits to what DelDOT would agree to. We can probably put conduit in it under the ground, but DelDOT's not going to pay for new lighting or new wiring or something like that for electric, for example. But there are items that can be included, and if that sign wants to be kept and that we can put it in location, I don't see a reason why we can couldn't add that to the contract.
Yeah, just one question. Thank you again for coming. But what can we expect at the 8th Street dead end? At the end of the street now, will it be curved? Will it have barriers? Will it have landscaping?
Correct. As of right now, what we are planning to do is it will be a curb straight across, so it will be a dead end. The road is wide enough. Where it can allow people to do a 3-point turn. Most people might use the parking lot to make the turn, but it will be a curb across the whole width of the road with drainage. There's going to be a sidewalk connection that comes out into the roadway. At one point, we had talked about putting a sidewalk all the way down, but DelDOT was not able to the next block to Tremont, but DelDOT's not able to accommodate that budget-wise anymore. So we're going to end the sidewalk connection into the street. There's also been some requests from public safety to still be able to drive over the curb for access. So we are not, as of right now, proposing any major physical feature, but there may be some need for a temporary signage. We'll also put signage farther down on 8th Street saying road closed and to alert people that they can no longer have access. And those signs can stay for a while or longer, but we will work with the city on the exact wording along 8th Street on what to put there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I think, yes, thank you so much for coming. Public comments coming up. You're not staying, right?
Wasn't planning to stay for the whole thing.
Okay. If there's a question specifically for Mr. Jimenez, we can address those, but not general comments.
It's pretty specific concerning that closing of 8th Street. St. Gabriel's Lodge, which is there to the left, as we look at that, had requested a couple of years ago to acquire that closed off portion of 8th Street. So therefore, 8th Street would then end at Tremont instead of going down whatever distance it's going to be at ending. And that's still a concern. If someone could guide us in that process, we'd appreciate it. I can speak with you afterwards. The second thing is the city council had approved the traffic light at 9th and Delaware to go along with this a couple of years ago. And I was wondering where that stands because there's a school over there, and I think there may be a dark bus stop. I'm not positive about that, but at that intersection, and the people that live like from 8th, 9th, 10th Street, there are no crosswalks across Delaware Street to the other side. And with this current configuration that sits here, someone would have to go down to that cutout, that whatever you want to call it, that green area, to cross over and then walk all the way back to the bus stop at 9th and Delaware. They were the two.
Can address those. Big one would be the 9th Street intersection. We did originally have a signal plan at that location. However, we went back to the school and discussed it with the school. The operations that the school have on a day-to-day basis, this traffic signal would have caused serious disruptions to them, the way that they have their in and out movements and the drop-offs and the crossing guards. So the school was not in favor of that without doing a reconfiguration of their intersection, the entrances in and out. And that's just something that we couldn't do as part of the project. So the signal that was planned there was removed. Our original plan was thinking that it would help the crosswalk and the students getting across, but the crossing guard said, we have no problems with it. They're able to stop traffic and let the students across. So we removed that from the project. The second question is a city question about what to do with the street. DelDOT has no authority on 8th Street. So if the city wants to give up the right of way, sell the right of way, whatever, that is something that the city council would have to take over. Those were both discussed previously, so you were 100% correct.
Question, sir. You mentioned the school. Was that Newcastle Elementary?
Yes.
In your communications with them, was that last year? When was that?
It was more than a year ago.
Reason why I ask is since then, there's been a referendum that's been passed. And as a part of that, the Colonial School District, which Newcastle Elementary is a part of, a lot of times they're redoing their parking lots and car lines. So I wonder if their stance on that may have changed, and just ask that you just check back in with them.
We can take a look at that, but I do know that would, budget-wise, that would cause issues. Yeah, the intent was to make an improvements there, and we drew a couple of different signal designs, and especially when we went to talk to the crossing guards, they said absolutely not.
I guess with the same area, with St. Gabe's being a private lot, having people turn around there or going through their lot, that's really something that can't be done. You can't count on that. Number two, as far as St. Gabe's acquiring that whole end, there's a household across the street, and they have right of way ownership from the tract property to the street. So the city can't just give up that whole dead end to St. Gabe's, just for your information. As far as the traffic light, I don't know, even with the house having a setback on, across from the school, it's on a bend, and without having a traffic light, forget the school, it's just a hazard, because I always go down the other street because I can see the cars better. Plus, chances are the traffic's stopped by Ferry Cutoff, so I can just kind of edge in and go to the back of that line. So I think if you're gonna close that street by St. Gabe's, there's got to be a lighting, so Councilman Attaway, if you would check on that referendum and what the flexibility is with the light. If you close the other street, that's a hazard coming out there. Plus all the traffic having to go through the neighborhoods that now splinter off between the two streets. Now you've increased it by 100%. Simple math. So I just recommend that whole section be reconsidered.
Not to get into the details, but from a history standpoint, when this project was undertaken, we did traffic counts and traffic studies for the amount of vehicles that travel on 8th Street, and they were kind of able to be accommodated at 9th Street. A lot of them are the delivery vehicles who actually, the discussion was that they would go somewhere else, because right now they use 8th Street as a cut through. But the residential units, residential people would have to go, more than likely go onto 9th Street.
I sat in on the WMAPCO committee when it was in operation. And even with that factored in, not that many delivery vehicles versus actual cars having to double back and cut through the community. And I guess your count's the same count with French Town Road all the way up Taylor's Corner. That shouldn't be wide. So nothing personal. I don't go by the traffic counts because they're wrong.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you so much, John. Before we start the rest of the meeting, I was reminded that we forgot to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so we'll take a moment and do that now. The next item is minutes of the meetings from October 8th and October 16th. Does the council have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Ms. Rick, I have two things on page, this is both on the October 8th minutes. On page 5, roughly in the middle of the page, it says the NRCS budget has been severely cut. I think for clarity, we should spell that out the first time. It's the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And then subsequently, the abbreviation is fine because we defined it. And then the other item, I think it's autocorrect gone wild on page 8, the third line, adjusting contributions, the way it reads would be more equitable and help with traction and retention. And I think that was my comment, and we meant attraction, to attract new employees. Anyone else have anything? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 8th with the corrections? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved, and
Just
then,
abstaining from that one, just to make it a point.
oh,
I was not
okay.
at the meeting.
Oh, that's right. And then we also had minutes from an October 21st special meeting. Are there any comments or corrections for that?
Motion to approve the minutes.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Okay. Report from the city administrator.
Good evening. A couple things. Our new code enforcement officer, Mr. Duncan, has begun working for the city. He's doing great work thus far, working on, violations and tracking everything that's going on. So we are really happy with this work. I encourage you all to come in and meet him. An additional job post be completed in the coming weeks. This will be posted internally and then will go public. The city website will continue to be updated this month with the large building project updates. And furthermore, we are working with the University of Delaware, as discussed during the budget season, to plan for the additional website project that will occur in the spring. So we're gonna begin meeting with them and just talking through that to get us started. The floating pier, the contractor has completed the drivings of the test piling and the analysis and the design. They've been going back and forth with our city engineer to finalize the design. They have a limited approval so that they could order the dock and the gangway. It takes some time. So they have the limited approval to proceed with that and they're finalizing the design. And from there, once they have a better estimate of the timeline for receiving the items, and as they continue working through the design, a installation timeline will be presented and I will share that with you. Exciting news, we do have our mobile stage that was delivered last week. So it's beautiful, it's really exciting, will be a great addition to the city for all of our events. I think everyone will be pleased with it. We are installing the lighting, so that will take a couple weeks, but it should be ready within the month. So very exciting. We have prepared and posted a second bid opportunity for the FY25 ADA sidewalk improvement contract. This covers the bundle projects that we received in 24 and 25 for the funding. The bidding is open until the 20th, at which time the bids will be open at the administration building at 1:30. A pre-bid meeting was held last Wednesday, the 6th, with additional comments. Addendums were made to the bid specifications and sent out to those who requested the packet. And those who are interested in requesting the packet should contact the city administration building. We'll send that information to you. Couple of grant updates since the last meeting. We worked with Encore to submit an M&T Bank grant application for the playground phase 2. And we also worked with the Newcastle Community Partnership to submit an M&T Bank grant for the dog park. Thank you to both those community organizations for your support and for working with us on completing that. We are also working to complete additional grants, including additional cybersecurity grants, a Homeland Security grant application, and a solid waste infrastructure grant, along with some other grants that we're working with Encore for the playground on. We were notified that we received a Teddy grant, which is a Tree for Every Delawarean initiative through DENREC. And this is for trees at Suzie Park and for the future dog park. The dog park, we are working on getting quotes to have the land surveyed so that we can put the bid package together. That information is forthcoming. I've received one quote thus far and I'm awaiting a second one. Street sweeping for the year ran from May through September. Many people moved their vehicles, so thank you to those who worked to have that completed. No tickets were issued, but next year we will be more strict in compliance measures, so please remember to follow that schedule. And leaf removal began in October with the first leaves falling and will be continuing as long as needed. There's been a lot of leaves this year, so please do your part in raking the leaves up and putting them to the curb. It's helpful if you do bag them, and then the teams will be out throughout the week to collect. Are there any questions for me? Yes.
Is there a specific day of the week for when the leaves may be picked up?
No, it kind of, just go with their schedule and their availability. It takes quite a few of them to run that machine, so, as you do them, they'll be collected.
But we don't need to contact anybody.
No.
They see it.
They'll see it and they'll pick it up, yep.
For the street cleaning, we have no, how many, nice reminders we're giving people?
I'm not sure if the reminders, that there were not any, there were no tickets, but I'm not sure if the reminders, I don't think many were given.
I know I suggested to you offline from this, but maybe create some Facebook pages for
Mhm.
each of the 4 different areas.
Mhm.
That you could put in reminders the day before, so people would be, they can sign up for it.
Sure.
That's something we can look into.
Yes, absolutely. And the solid waste infrastructure grant, part of that is another, request that came from council regarding like the, magnets for street sweeping and like, waste collection schedules. So we will certainly consider putting that on there as well.
Okay, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I just think we need to go back to the treasurer's.
You forgot me. I haven't been around.
Sorry, and we welcome back Mr. Rissman after a period of absence, and I do apologize.
Not a problem. This is the report at the end of October, which is the 4th month of the year. So we're a third of the year through, and we're in really good financial health. We have total cash in our accounts of $13,678,000. And of that, $10,308,000 is unrestricted funds, and $3,369,000 are in some restricted funds. And so moving forward, as the year progresses, we're not going to be collecting as much money as we have in the past, only because at the end of October, we collected 54% of our projected revenues. And the expenses are pretty even through the year. So as we go through the year, we're going to see more expense and less income. But that's not a problem. So financially, we're in very good health.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Rissman? Okay, thanks again. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report subject to audit? A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Chief McCabe?
Thank you. Good evening. I can be brief. It looks like we have a packed agenda. So a couple of things I wanted to point out. We have some OHS funding coming our way for the holidays, where our target violations are going to be speed, impaired driving, and distracted driving. So you'll see some hopefully some extra marked units on the road for that. And in that line of enforcement, this Thursday, 2 of our officers are going to be recognized by MAD for their DUI enforcements from over the last year. It's a pretty significant accomplishment to get to that point. And then lastly, we did have one significant incident that we've investigated. On the 21st of October, we investigated a shooting at Deemer's Landing, where a round came from one apartment through the wall into another apartment. During the investigation, 2 of our officers were assaulted by the residents in the apartment. Arrests have been made for that, and we're still trying to identify the primary contributing factor to the discharge of the weapon. Nobody was struck. That's all I have.
Thank you. Communications, Mr. Mattingly?
Thank you, Council President. I'll be brief as well. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Ms. Santillo and Councilperson Day for their work on the new stage that the city has acquired. It's going to be a great addition to our community. Secondly, I'd like to thank Council President for her leadership in adding point number 10 to today's discussion that hopefully we'll later talked about, but I want to thank her for doing that. And then third, as a working father, I also struggle to find more time and more coffee. And I'm sure many of you all on Team Newcastle feel the same way, no matter what life cycle you're in. And I often sometimes find myself here coming to meetings and I'm like, am I gonna have time to eat? Am I gonna eat later or what? And I recognize that it's probably a barrier for people and maybe a reason why some people don't come. And I've been on lots of teams in my life, some good, some bad. All the good ones break bread together. And so through the donations of Mr. Huerta and Three Countries Pizza, we are going to have some food in December. The goal is to maybe do that on a quarterly basis and hopefully get some donations from perhaps some of the local businesses, et cetera. But the primary goal is to strip away any barrier for people to not come and to hope that more people come, get engaged, break bread together, realize that we're in this fight together, and we are one Team Newcastle. Thank you, Council President.
Okay, Mr. Zabaka?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming in a great number tonight. I'm gonna start with what Council Person Mataway just mentioned. I applaud that effort about reducing those barriers. I was just thinking and talking to my wife right before this meeting. It seems to never work out to have a dinner right before the meeting, or it's kind of like kissing kids goodbye, having a bite of dinner, dad is gonna see you tomorrow kind of thing. I know it's my challenge, but nice to see that. Not nice to see, but it's nice to see that it's not, unique challenge to come to meetings. So I agree absolutely that we should, feel like one big village here, working towards, something together. I also want to join in thanking Antonina and Councilperson Dave for the mobile stage. I'm really excited to enjoy it as a resident, and also looking forward for everybody to enjoy it as well. I really want to thank Antonina. I met with her also the other day, just to check in and bounce some ideas off. And I heard a lot of this already then, and I was just amazed by, update that she gave me. And specifically, thank you for looking into a lot of grants proactively and following up on some of the grants that we as a council recommend. It does help the city and the residents tremendously. One of the things that I also realize is it's getting dark late, and one of the part of the year when people get a little more depressed because you leave in the morning for work, it's dark, you come back home, it's dark. So I just wanted to give a reminder, still go out and exercise, try to be active, whether it's walking, running, biking, enjoy our parks, enjoy our beautiful city. That's just a little, thing I'm trying to remind myself that, day is not done just because it's dark out there, but try to be, out there and, energized. Thank you to Chief McCabe for inviting us to Special Olympics fundraiser the other day. I was able to attend with Councilperson Mataway, Antonina, Chief, the fire chief. It was honestly one of those things that I forgot how great organization was, and I got reattached to their mission. I used to be a volunteer when I was in college. I don't even know when, but I kind of have a renewed commitment to the organization. One of the things that struck to me was just how great of an impact the organization have for people of all abilities. So it's not one of those things you go in and say, this is a great organization for individuals with disabilities. But what you take away more is that how many individuals in Delaware these individuals impact and how positively. So I urge you all to, look into their mission, support it any way you want, volunteer. I'm looking forward to, see what we as a city can do in hosting some potential events here. And in that team, I wanted to talk about playground. I'm excited for the work that Encore Playground Subcommittee in the city is doing to provide that same kind of environment in our town too, because the playground has been one of those things that from the get-go, the subcommittee set it to be accessible to all ages and all abilities. So I'm really looking forward to see how this flourishes and how all the kids in the neighborhood, kind of lean on each other's and learn from each other. And to that, I want to thank Encore for keep pursuing grants. They just emailed us a day or two ago that they received $75,000 grant from Christiana Care community investment fund. So, just another step closer to, you know, completing the phase 2 of that playground. And the last, sorry guys for a little lengthy update, happy Thanksgiving, because we won't see you until December. Hope you guys will have a warm meal and place to stay and, good time with your family and friends.
Thank you. Mr. Zeller?
I have no items this evening.
Mr. Day?
Yes, just a couple items. So the next Old Newcastle Litter Crew event will be Saturday from 10 to 12 a.m. We'll be meeting in the parking lot south of Dobbinsville. This is in coordination with CCD, Community Collaboration of Delaware, and the Historic Newcastle Lions Club. We're going to clean that area of the beach and the roadway. So we encourage everybody to come out and join us. We usually have a lot of fun. Hopefully it's nice weather. But again, if you have time, it's 10 to 12 on Saturday morning, the Saturday the 16th. I just wanted to recognize the MSC. I've gotten 2 letters from my home for a possible leak at my property. Both times I had toilets that were actually leaking. That I didn't hear or know about. So I do want to at least recognize MSC at one of our previous meetings. We gave them the ability to take a loan for new water meters that allows them to do this. So it does save us money when we do react to them. So I wanted to mention that. I wanted to get the Bull Hill Boatyard lease on this meeting. That wasn't, I couldn't get that done. I do expect it to bring it to the meeting for December. With a long list of items tonight, it probably works better for December anyway. I wanted to thank Antonina for all the work she did with the band shell. We're hoping we could get it here for the spirit of Christmas, and it seems like that's going to work out. So good news there. And I'll also report that I did meet with Trustee Clayton about the security and cameras for the bathrooms. This weekend I met with him. So we're moving forward on that. That's all.
Thank you. Well, I also wanted to talk about the MSC. I wanted to recognize their fine work. 2 particular things in the last month brought this to mind. First, I read in our local paper that members of the MSC staff, including, I believe, General Manager Scott Blomquist, were among the crews that went to help restore power in North Carolina after their devastating hurricanes. So it's always nice when we can help other people. And then secondly, I attended a meeting of the Delaware League of Local Governments where the topic was just the problem of PFAS, which you may have heard of as the so-called forever chemicals in water supplies. And I met 2 members of the Delaware Rural Water Authority. When they heard I was from Newcastle, they immediately spoke very highly of our MSC, which was among the first in Delaware to deal with filtering the PFAS from our drinking water. We are like a year ahead of everybody else, apparently, because of an official from another town in Delaware said she had only recently learned that this was a problem, while Newcastle's already doing it. Filters are in place. They have been for several years. Our water test is fine, meets all the standards. So we knew they were good, but it's always nice to hear it from professional associates outside Newcastle, and we're very lucky to have them. So that's all I have for tonight. The mayor.
Yeah, Carl.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, World War I ended. Known otherwise as Armistice Day in the UK, it is known as Veterans Day here. If you would please stand for one moment, if you are able, and let's observe a moment of silence for all veterans. Thank you. This month I met with Encore and then with Barry DuPont out at the playground. They asked a lot of questions regarding what was needed, the demographics of town and everything else. So it was very interesting. It's an honor to meet with them. If you missed the Board of Adjustment Education meeting, I believe that is a link that you can go watch. Thank you, Max, for that. It is what we all needed, and if more people would have showed up, you would understand exactly how the Board of Adjustment works. On Thursday, I had the honor of attending a naturalization ceremony at the Newcastle Courthouse Museum with 20 new citizens, and they came from 11 different countries, and it was just awesome. They were very excited. We have our wreath workshops coming up on December 5th and 6th, and of course, Spirit of Christmas on December 14th. I would also like to encourage those of you who may have some free time to take a look at volunteering at the VA. I did bingo there the other day for about an hour with our veterans, and it was a lot of fun. And if you've got free time, check into doing that. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, a good meal with friends and family. If you're traveling, please travel safe. I'd like to invite Mr. John Reeves up to the podium to give a brief overview of the outreach position.
Thank you. This is our final report, basically, on the period of the outreach position, so I thought we'd summarize real quickly. So when Fee and I started on the outreach project back in March, the original job description was very broad and complicated. So the first challenge was to develop a more practical agenda. We came up with a list of tactics and strategies, a new website and new and expanded social media platforms, location-based marketing with print assets, a venue guide for event planners, a strategic shift to more frequent, smaller events throughout the year, and a brand strategy based on new destination themes, in addition to the usual historical theme, all ships, cycling, arts, etc. New ideas evolved over the next few months, including a weekly digital calendar of activities shared by all the organizations in town, and new destination themes, including Newcastle as a beautiful destination for photography and photographers, and Newcastle as a destination for food and fine dining. We made some progress in all of these areas. Not all of that progress is visible equally, but is concrete and available to build on in the future. In a couple of areas, we think we hit the ball out of the park. The farmers market on the green turned out to be an unexpected hit with a lot of visibility and benefits. We think of it as the prototype of a weekly event that brings people back to Newcastle on a regular basis, not just once a year. Another event is stronger and social media platforms. Between Facebook accounts like Visit Newcastle, Visit Historic Newcastle, and various event-specific pages developed with Delaware Events, we estimate almost a 10x increase in reach and engagement. There's certainly more work to be done. The website, marketing to event planners, and the shared weekly calendar need to be moved forward. The Saturday market and tall ships initiatives can be further developed to be sustainable and self-funding. We certainly hope the council considers future funding for a tourism-related position. We don't know of any shop, restaurant, historic site, or program in town that is not in need of more visitors. However, we suggest greater focus in any new position on any one of the three possible areas: communications to social media, or facilitating and incubating new events, or strategic development of new program initiatives. We're available to facilitate community-based collaborative sessions to evolve a shared vision of tourism and visitor outreach for the benefit of historic Newcastle. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, comments from Goodwill Fire Department?
Good evening. Our monthly report should be included in a council packets. As an overview, 279 total incidents for the month, 157 EMS incidents, 122 fire rescue type incidents. The burn ban does remain in effect as the drought and dry conditions continue. We've had several red flag days and we've gotten pretty lucky as far as no major brush fires in our area. However, we are finding ourselves replacing units that are committed to other fires throughout the region. So that's keeping us busy. We would like to thank everybody from the community who attended our fire prevention open house at the end of October. We still do have smoke detectors available at the fire station, if you'd like to stop by and pick them up if you need them. In addition, if you need help installing them, we can do that as well. That's a little bit more of a coordinated effort, but still stop by and we can try to help you out with that. The Christmas season is right around the corner. Our Santa schedule will be posted. In addition, mark your calendars for Saturday, December 7th for our breakfast with Santa. And like the others, I wish you all a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Any questions for the fire company?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, public comments. The usual rules, you have 3 minutes. Please sign in, state your name and address, and remember to speak into the mic so that everyone can hear you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Foster, the proud owner of the Mercury Cafe and Tea House here in town. We've been living here in this awesome town for about 4.5 years, May 2020. The Mercury's been open since December 2021. As many of you know, Chandler here and I recently opened our second B&B here in this lovely town, right on beautiful historic Packet Alley. After checking all of our boxes with the following current city ordinances with regards to rental units, tourist homes, and loading, parking, passing our rental inspection, and speaking with neighbors abutting the property, we have moved forward with booking our B&B. I would like to thank the city of Newcastle, Antonina, Mayor Leary, and the council for being so accessible as we embarked on this new and very exciting project. Our first booking was a family of 3 who were visiting Newcastle for the first time. The second was our former tourism director, John Reeves, and his wife, Cheryl, who were promoting a staycation project here in town and had such a great experience they ended up extending for a day. Our third rental was a wonderful couple, actually I just left them a couple of days ago, who lived about an hour away in New Jersey, were considering Newcastle as a place for possible retirement. They also extended their stay for a day because the sunrises were some of the best they had ever seen. The people coming to our town are coming to Newcastle as a tourist destination, steeped in history with a plethora of sights to be seen. There is a small cohort of residents who do not support this project for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is that they are worried that suddenly all the homes on the Strand specifically will be turned into tourist homes, and it will water down the resident-tourist ratio, causing people with little to no interest in preserving their town to be present. One of the many requirements of tourist homes is to have parking available based on the capacity of the home. As you take a stroll down the Strand, you will notice the beautiful historic homes, the fall decorations, but one thing you will not see are any driveways or dedicated parking spaces for these potential tourist homes. Of the 41 homes on the Strand, only 5 have dedicated parking, not counting the 2 large apartment buildings bookending the Strand. Section 230-28A 12 of the city code related to off-street parking and loading requirements requires tourist homes to have 1 space for each guest room or suite. We do comply with these requirements, but future homes will not be able to due to the simple fact there is no possible way to provide this to their tenants. Thank you for your time, and if any residents are looking for extra space to house your family when they come to visit, please reach out. I'll be happy to extend a discount to anyone who hears this message.
I'm Dean Beal, I live at 26th Strand.
Excuse me, could you turn the mic towards you so that people can hear you? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Benny Beal. I live at 26th Strand. I'd like to thank the council members for your willingness to discuss tourist homes and Airbnbs in the historic residential areas of our city. The 29 homeowners on the Strand registered their concerns against tourist homes being allowed to operate in the historic residential district. Appreciate your efforts to address our concerns. These homeowners recognize the tension the council faces in addressing the city's commercial needs and the desires of the homeowners to maintain the residential character of the city's neighborhoods. It is our view that absent appropriate controls in the number and manner and places of operation of short-term rentals, neighbors stand to be harmed by undue commercialization and disruption to the primary and overarching purpose of the neighborhood, being first and foremost a residential community where people live, not a place of transient occupancy. We believe that it is possible to satisfy both groups, residents and commercial interests. To that end, we propose that to maintain the residential character of our neighborhoods, short-term rentals must be in owner-occupied homes in the historic residential district. We accept that with appropriate regulations, it is possible to not disrupt our historic residential districts where our citizens actually live. We propose the following definition for the kind of short-term rentals that can exist in the historic residential district. Quote, a conditional use of a home whereby the record owner of the property designates the property as his legal principal residence, using one or more bedrooms, whether they are in residence overnight for the purpose of providing sleeping accommodations for paying guests for between 1 and 29 consecutive days. It's our view that only properties meeting this definition should be allowed to operate in the historic residential district. In closing, tourist homes, as now defined by Newcastle City Code, do not comply with the state's definition, which states that a facility have no cooking facilities and at least 5 bedrooms. Consequently, such facilities should be permitted in the historic, should not be permitted in the historic residential district, but only in the commercial district. Thank you very much.
My name is Cheryl Favor. I'm one of the signatories to this document. I'd like copies of. Thank you, Suzanne Souter, for allowing us to come and to address our issues.
Everyone has the right to speak, so.
Well, thank you. We'd like to address the issue of potential regulation of guest accommodations in the city of Newcastle. We are writing as private citizens with a variety of backgrounds and experiences, including arts, education, nonprofit, business, volunteering, and community development. In researching this issue, we found that the city of Newcastle's last comprehensive plan in 2020 was very helpful, including a community survey done in 2018. One question was particularly interesting. Would you like to see more, less, or about the same of the following land uses? The choices included useful things like parks and recreation, community centers, and healthcare facilities, but only 3 of those uses were scored more desirable by a majority of respondents. Stores and restaurants, both at 70%, and arts and entertainment at about 60%. 6 years and a devastating pandemic later, creative entrepreneurs like the proprietors of Mercury, Zolli's, Oaxaca, the New Terry House, and the Sycamore have begun to address these community concerns in a substantial and hopefully sustainable way. There are new shops and arts activities and a general sense of more fun and engaging things to see and do. Though it is our residents who want shops and restaurants, we need out-of-town visitors to keep them economically viable. One challenge, we need more attractive places for visitors to stay. Overnight visitors are more likely to do multiple things in town: shop, eat, walk in the park, visit museums, tour historic houses, leave with memories of Newcastle that encourage them to return, and bring friends with them. Guest accommodations mean that residents can ask friends and family members to come to town and stay. Local weddings and reunions have a place to put guests. Rather than thinking about how to restrict hospitality investments, we should be identifying ways to encourage and support them. Rather than looking for theoretical problems to regulate, we should be looking for opportunities and synergies. For example, we'd like to propose a volunteer staycation project that would encourage residents to support local guest accommodations, as well as restaurants, shops, and museums, particularly less busy periods when the patronage is most helpful. and write about them on social media and review sites. One thing we don't want is to discourage young and creative entrepreneurs from being committed to making things happen in our community, particularly as we recover from a pandemic downturn. They're not a problem, they're a gift and a key part of any comprehensive long-term strategy to make Newcastle a great place to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Batty, 18 East Third Street. My name down here. Thanks for the chance to make a couple comments. I'm talking about the bike racks, the temporary bike racks that were put up on at 114 Delaware Street. Understand it was an experiment. The bike racks have been up for 48 days. A group of people in the city have been observing them and totaling the number of bicycles parked there during that period. And we identify less than 10 in that entire period. What that means is that even if we were to look at, two times maybe bikes parking a day, and I can provide this data to you. We have photographs to back up a lot of it. After a while, I have to be honest, we gave up taking pictures because of just crowding the phone with pictures of empty bike racks. So we didn't bother with that after a while. But it means that over the lifetime of this experiment, 96% of the time the bike racks were unoccupied. I think that's sending a fairly clear message that they are extraneous to requirements. Meanwhile, we took a look constantly at the rack by Nora Lee's, which is suitable for 30 bicycles, has a bicycle pump, has water, and I was really happy to hear Councilman Day that there's security for the bathrooms that's being built in, because security for that place has been a big complaint. Bathrooms are an asset which keep getting wrecked, and so getting that whole place secured, I think, is very beneficial. But what it says, a kind of across the board, is good experiment, nice to figure it out. But during that time, the total number of lost automobile parkings, if you assume 2 automobiles parking in that space per day, is 96. So we had a big loss. I heard a lot of complaining by local people who couldn't park their vehicles, and also by real estate agents who were frustrated by it. Let's focus on what we have. We have parking in the middle of our city for 30 bicycles with all the amenities developed by Delaware Greenways and complying with all of our rules about parking, shielding parking from public view and so forth. Let's fix that. And let's stop playing around with things that clearly are not marketed, are not desired, and are not needed when we have such a beautiful amenity already. Thank you.
Bill Gross, 1301 13th Street. I never thought I'd say this, but I actually agree with Miss Batty on something. When the idea of the bike rack was brought up, I said, put it by the library. Don't take up spots that we're already hurting for. So I think that bike rack should be moved to space right in front of the library, because people going to the library might ride a bike. Other issues, meeting rules for the planning commission. I feel that every meeting, I don't care if it's council, commission, or committee, should be allowed to talk about not just agenda items, but anything pertinent to that committee. I'm not saying something totally irrelevant, but I firmly believe that restricting people to agenda items, that's ridiculous, because it doesn't give you freedom of speech to discuss issues that pertain to that committee that should be brought up. Election exclusions, it's targeting me. I mean, there's no doubt about it. 8 people have purposely come up and said felons should not be allowed to hold positions. Well, the state says if you have an expungement or have been given a pardon by the governor, you can run. So I firmly urge before this does end up in court, that you add that in, that someone is able to run for a city position with either a governor's pardon or an expungement. Another issue is wage and lodging tax. Just like with the police, we want to get good employees in town. By charging a wage tax, are you serious? We want to improve what we have. So I firmly urge you to not do a wage tax. As Council President Platt said, the businesses need to start paying into the city that pays them dividends. So I firmly believe a lodging tax and a business tax is appropriate. As far as future and past projects, it is, I did look it up. For the building moratorium, you can put the moratorium on past approved projects pending their acceptance of things that come up. If they have not broken ground, they have not progressed with the project and they're sitting on the land. So I firmly recommend that you add that in as an addendum, that past and future projects do have to observe the moratorium. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Barbara Belford. I live at 29 The Strand and have lived in Exeter for over 45 years. I'd like to get back to the topic of tourist home regulation. Related to tourist home regulation is the issue of rental arbitrage. That is the subleasing of long-term rentals on a short-term basis. Again, the subleasing of a long-term rental held by an arbitrator on a short-term basis to tourists for leisure. The homeowner contracts with the arbitrator, that is the management entity, to obtain short-term rentals and to manage short-term rentals in properties not occupied by the owner. This is not permitted in many cities across the United States, namely New York City, Las Vegas, San Francisco, Santa Monica, and it's prohibited in historic Williamsburg. Again, it is a non-owner occupied rental arrangement. In conclusion, we respectfully request council to consider the effect of rental arbitrage on the integrity of the historic residential district.
Hi, my name's Lori Williams and I live on 30 The Strand. And I need to tell you, first of all, I love our commercial sector. I love the Mercury. I recommend just about everybody that comes here. I have family members that have come and have looked at the bed and breakfast because it's beautiful and I recommend that as well. However, I do think that the commercial sector should be where we go to enjoy every single one of these lovely things. I think it should expand. I think that we should have more. I would love to see a little bodega that is charming, that has butter and bread and everything that I forget, have to run to the store for. But I don't agree with encroaching on commercial into our residential areas. I think our residential areas need to be preserved. I believe that our residential areas, we deserve to not necessarily have to monitor or babysit what's going on as a commercial environment. I know all of my neighbors. We don't all necessarily all get along on a regular basis, but we do look out for each other and we know each other. When you insert commercial or people that we are not aware of, we automatically go on not high alert and an alarm, but certainly what's happening. That's not what we want to do in residential area. And I know you, and I know he's very responsive. I just don't want the mixture of the commercial and the residential. It changes the dynamics for where we live and the comfort zone that when we purchase our homes in these areas, we know it's residential, it's comfortable. This is who and where we're gonna live and know each other. It changes it entirely. It possibly could affect people buying. I know that if when I was purchasing on the Strand, if I knew that there was commercial sectors blended in, I would have given pause purchasing there. So I love our town. I love all that you guys do. I frequent many of your shops and I don't ever want to harm you guys, but in the same respect, I don't want the residential community to be harmed either. And there's no hand up here.
I'm David Brundage.
Excuse me, Mr. Brundage, could you speak into the mic, please? If you want to take it out of the holder, I know you're taller than the mic.
If you can't hear me, you let me know.
It's everybody.
Anyway, I live at 25 The Strand. The side of my house is Packet Alley. My back fence adjoins number 1 Packet Alley, the rental, now commercial building in the midst of our residential special historic area. We all do our best to be very good neighbors, and for 99.9% of the time, we are very good at it. What I'd like to urge you to consider, though, is that when you start adding any sort of potential commercial business inside a residential area, I consider that a foot in the door for whatever else may come down the road. As it is, this is over my back fence. Okay, so maybe all the people who be staying there are wonderful, well-behaved, but we're not perfect. That's why we have a police department. So if any incident were to happen, I would be the first to know. I would be the first to have to report it. Is that the kind of responsibility I should be have thrust upon me for this kind of operation? Secondly, you haven't actually yourself walked down Packet Alley. I urge you to do that because it is a bit problematic. It is narrow. On 2 sides are the walled homes. At the very end, there is a tiny area for cars to turn around. We tried to address that. The folks who have been living there have handled it just fine. But when you're talking about brand new people who have little or no clue as to that, it can become a problem. We also have fair amount of parking available on the Strand itself, but for those of you who actually park there, the very high curbs, you park on the left side, you can't open your driver's door. You park on the right side, your passengers can't get out in many of these areas, so parking is a problem. However, in our regular commercial area along Delaware Street, there's plenty of parking. There are no challenges. It's easy. And the existing establishments of Terry House and other things have their own parking. It's not a problem. And they've been there a long time. And the main thing is it's on the commercial strip, Delaware. So I urge you to consider, as in Mr. Beal's comments, to look into studying and changing our city code in response to these homes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Luckily, I'm a little more appropriate for the height of this. And thank you. I've been to another meeting before when I had to do an extension off of my house. Jeffrey Cheskin, I'm 31 The Strand. My fence, backyard fence, abuts this property that we're discussing in Packet Alley. I was not contacted prior to any of this, even though I'm adjacent to the property. I heard about this recently. I was not happy. I own properties in Delaware. I am a small business owner in Delaware. I own commercial property in Delaware. I own a house in Delaware. I own 2 houses in Newcastle. This is something I wasn't very happy about being kind of tossed on me as kind of a surprise. Airbnbs have a little bit of a dual edge. I've stayed at ones and had great experiences. I've stayed at one and had a horrible experience. But one of the horrible experiences was in Vermont. It was a beautiful town. It was in a beautiful area. It's not a good experience. It went bad, and it's unfortunate, but things do happen. What I want not to happen is for my wife, who is at our house alone while I'm working during the week with our small dog, to have someone possibly peeping in to see her, because it's very, very visible from that house. In my mind, there's a little bit of a zoning issue that's got to be worked out with certain legalities. There's also a safety issue, and it was just brought up a little while ago. I hope that all of the people going there are going to be fine. I hope they're all going to be responsible. I hope they're all going to be in good behavior. I wish that could be guaranteed. I wish there was cameras that could supervise all this. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
That makes me feel much better. Good. I actually feel better.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Again, I'm finding some of these things out now. And I am pro small business because I own small businesses. I've been to all the places in Newcastle. But I'm trying to also think like the other gentleman that is adjacent to Packet Alley. I moved there not to have a hotel in my backyard. I moved there because of the beauty, the history. I collect history. I've got an amazing historical collection of things in my house. I don't want to tell you the value because maybe someone would break into my house and go after some of this stuff. I've got some very valuable things in my house that I'm a little curious and cautious about. I don't want to put drapes all over the back of my house and block that beautiful view that I paid so much for. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Hi there. Again, my name's Amanda Rose, and I want to also add some information and context related to the discussion on the Airbnb. I would ask that council considers the limitations that passing this resolution would have on existing businesses in this city, in addition to the opportunity for growth within this city. The implications of passing this and setting hard boundaries on residential versus commercial properties could impact many private-owned businesses within our city. We are currently living in an economy that is often referred to as the side gig economy, majority of millennials and people under the age of 45 are working multiple jobs. And that includes having side gigs such as artists in this town, people operating, spas, lash extensions, yoga studios, things like that. So if you are considering this sort of hard line, I think there would be a little bit more clarity that would need to be established as to how you would really enforce that, and what those logistics would actually be. I also want to ask you all that if you are expecting commercialization to expand within this town and for us to grow profits within this town, I am curious as to where you all think that that is going to expand to, because there's really one main street in this town and majority of the businesses are taken on it. And I'm just not really sure how we're really expected to grow business or make more opportunity for that growth. I think if you're expecting that commercialization to expand within the town limits, yet you're protesting the ability for Airbnbs and apartments to exist, that does seem a bit as though you're policing the town. It does seem a bit classist, quite honestly. And I do ask you all where, exactly we are expected to live or how we're expected to bring in new people into this town with these sorts of limitations in place. Thank you.
My name is Ann Dorsey Fisk yet again, and I can see that I can sign now. Sorry. I just want to say that I think that young woman is a little over the top. I don't think there's any problem, there's never been any problem in this town with someone renting a room or several rooms, as long as that person owns a house. And when somebody owns a house, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, the house the Wicks have on the corner of 3rd and Delaware. There was a lady there who was the widow of a doctor of town, and she always rented rooms to people who were coming to see Newcastle. I think what we want is a balance of something that's good for residents and good for businesses. And the previous person before me was talking about not enough room on the commercial side of Delaware Street. I was counting houses on there that aren't currently commercial. Well, unless you can count, of course, the Bill's house. But I mean, there are a number of houses that are private houses that someday could be turned into commercial businesses, because it is the commercial side of the street. So I really, and as I say, if somebody wants to rent a house, rent rooms in their house for a tourist, and I believe that code that was quoted said you can do that from 1 to 29 days, as long as you own the house.
Any other comments? Somebody else is coming up behind you. If you're ready to be last.
My name is Ron Bukovic, and I live at 33 The Strand. And I too would like to thank council for including the short-term rental issue as part of the evening's agenda. Having spent the past few weeks considering the various formats associated with this type of rental, I've identified 3 points that stand proud from the others. First, short-term rentals as B&Bs have been the model for American and English home business for many decades. The description of the B and B format where part of a homeowner's primary residence, excuse me, is to let to travelers with restrictions should be acceptable in the historic district neighborhoods. Many tourist cities with historic districts, including Charleston, Williamsburg, Richmond, Salem, permit short-term rentals, but only when the clause about a home being a primary residence is a requirement. Secondly, the updating the city code for a so-called tourist home so it complies with the definition designated by the state. And having this format operate in the commercial district is also a worthy solution to neighborhood problems. No neighbors I've discussed short-term rentals with have ever mentioned restricting commerce on Delaware Street, but they do believe the business's license should be in compliance with the state code, and the businesses should be operated in the city designated commercial areas. Thirdly, several residents are particularly sensitive to the idea of an owner subletting a home to an agent. Perhaps they have read the article describing an agent in Wilmington who manages 12 homes in neighborhoods as short-term rentals. However, simply requiring the homeowner to be the manager and in their primary home would automatically deter the manager model from operating in the neighborhoods. In closing, consideration of the proper place for short-term rentals in the city is generic. It is not directed at or needn't include any particular person or persons, but is being considered for the purpose of establishing a set of principles which is fair to the residents as well as the business community. With thanks, we 29 residents of the Strand ask council to vote for moving the short-term rental question to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
My name's David Connell, I've been a mortgage at 725 Lime Street, Dobbsville. Of course, I haven't been there for 17 months now because of Jeffrey Bergstrom, the other reference, Richard McKay protecting him. Additionally to that, it cost Richard McKay personally cost at least $600,000. By this time next year, it'll be $700,000. Put that aside, I'm a one issue guy. I've been coming here 3 years now, has it been? Dozens of times. What do I keep saying? Let me repeat it. There's a 3-story structure been put in the middle of a 2-story city block. It has a near flat ceiling. It's over 150 years old. And it has a balloon ceiling construction. So what have you just created, Jeffrey? Huh? A smoke generating firebomb capable of killing every person on the entire city block just by smoke inhalation alone. Makes sense to you, the department? Not unless you burn the whole city block down. I mean, I don't know what you got, racketeering operation going on. Numbers racket, man. You know, win the trifecta, kill the entire family, mom, dad, kid, same house, win the jackpot, what? So, you got $10 million floating around. Get the joke there. So these two structures, there's one in the 700 block of Center Street. There's one in the middle, 700 block of Climate Street. They have to be rendered harmless to the rest of the homes in the neighborhood, period, or torn down. So I keep coming here 3 years. Now, these past 3 years, if I said anything that you don't understand, if I confused you in any way, well then, you're understanding the gravity of the situation. I don't think it's humorous in any way, shape, or form. You think you're going to get a fair shake in this town? I don't know. 17 months I've been homeless. I got something special for you next month, let you know about it. Fix the problem. Oh, one more thing, I got a few seconds here. This new code inspector of yours from Wilmington, huh? You hired a hack. I'm gonna expose him for that. I can guarantee you. I don't consider myself to be a police officer. I don't consider myself to be a dentist. What I am is a 41-year construction work expert in the trade, fire codes, building codes, QA, QC. I've done all kind of things in the construction industry. And this man here, as far as I'm concerned, is risking catastrophe, endangering lives on the block, and straight up, what do you call it, home improvement fraud. Making money, Jeff, huh? $750 for that permit? How much are you sticking in your pocket? That was big.
I'm Patty Isaac Hansen at 49 The Strand. I've lived here on the Strand for 28 years, and I just want you guys to see us. We're not commercial. We're not out to make a buck. We're out to live. And I want you to know that Ron Vukolich and several of the people on the Strand have lived there and protected that area, Packet Alley. If you remember back in 2012, Sandy flooded the carriage house, and several of the neighbors, including Ron and Ellie Cleveland, put together funds, worked with the city and built a berm. And he did that. Why? Because it's his community, it's his residents, and he loves and cares about the people in his neighborhood. We're not about commercial people. We just want to live a life. If we want dinner or we want something nice, sure, we'll go up to Delaware Street. But where we live is where I want my grandchildren to be able to play in the yard without me being concerned that there's going to be an issue. I want my dogs to be there in my yard and bark and be safe. I want to sleep at night without sirens and things going on. And I just don't feel like it's appropriate. I didn't buy a house I bought a house in a residence so I could relax. My husband and I, we had our own business going on, and we never had time for vacation. So at least when we went out to our backyard, we could have some peace and quiet and calm and enjoy our evenings. And with this, it's just very upsetting, and we don't support it at all. And we're very disappointed that people that we thought came to our town to be our neighbors and join our community came here just to be opportunists, just to take a buck. So how much do you really make off of these tourist homes? You know, how many tourists do we want in town? And you know, you see in Europe where people are like sick and tired of tourists. And I sometimes I'm sick and tired of events every Saturday, you know, and I don't want to. Yeah, I've lived here 28 years. I didn't come here to make a buck. Okay, you understand that? I came here to live my life. So thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on. The next item is the second reading discussion, possible vote on ordinance 548, which is the one about the wetlands parcel. So you. Sure, thank you.
I'm just discussing my plans.
Okay.
I'll be back next week.
All right.
And I'll be able to walk without.
All right. This isn't really a pause. I was just trying to let those who wanted to leave, and then we need to move on because we have a lot more to go. So ordinance 548 is about trying to keep the not have any more of these so-called orphan parcels created, which create lots that cannot be built on, as Mr. Walton explained in the beginning. Does council have any questions or further discussion on this? We do have an amendment that Mr. Walton has suggested to change section 8, and he gave us each a copy of it. It changes the line that says this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by the council, and it expands it to the following. This ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by city. Please. Shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by city council. The foregoing notwithstanding any application submitted prior to the introduction of this ordinance that is complete and found acceptable upon review by the city of Newcastle shall be exempt from the application of this ordinance. And I believe Mr. Walton said he proposes this for clarity and to avoid potential legal issues. Is that correct?
That is correct. I could go in, I could just say that it's a doctrine called vested rights, and those folks who are already in the system or in the pipeline probably already have it and don't want to get into a dispute about that. If you would like a long dissertation on vested rights, I can give it to you, but I don't think it's necessary.
I think we'll take your word for it. Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to?
So question.
Sure.
So, just clarification, I think I know why, but could you just clarify that the major driver behind this ordinance is these trusts that were created for 5-10 years or something like that, that eventually run out of money and then the lot is not maintained anymore. We're trying to prevent that by implementing this. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. You have these.
Not to trim it down, but.
Yeah, you have these subdivisions that are out there, and I'm aware of at least 2 that have occurred since I've been here. Where, because of the way the code reads, they subdivide off, I'm gonna call it the badlands or the wetlands, the floodlands, right? And then what's that create? That creates a parcel that nobody's ever gonna use. And because of that, now, it doesn't require a lot of maintenance per se, but eventually nobody's gonna pay the taxes on that lot. And the idea is that you can't orphan those parcels, make them a burden on the city 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
So in practice, if a developer is to come and take a parcel that involves wetland, they would still probably go parcel that out for insurance, whatever, bank purposes to get on, but they would just have to have a trust that keeps funding this.
Or a dummy corporation, or an LLC.
But it wouldn't stop after a certain amount of time, is what this is doing, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It wouldn't allow them to subdivide it off just for insurance or.
I see. Thank you.
Well, really what it creates though is that it would create, even if they wanted to subdivide it off, it really has to be a buildable lot. That's the idea that would have value, so they wouldn't just go defunct.
That's what we were trying to get to, yes, sir.
Right.
Just. I want to make one point of clarification with your amendment. So, it reads, foregoing notwithstanding any application submitted prior to the introduction of this ordinance that is complete and found acceptable upon review by the city of Newcastle shall be exempt from the application of this ordinance. I just want to make sure that I can confirm this. We're only talking about an application, not talking about something that was approved. If they submit an application that's complete and accepted, they are not part of this ordinance.
Right, and anybody who's already been approved, because they had to have an application to get approval.
Yeah.
They're safe.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that. Yep.
Right.
One question I had for clarity, with this ordinance, is there still an ability, if this ordinance passes, is there still an ability to appeal to the Board of Adjustment to circumvent or go around?
Yes, sir. You can always seek the Board of Adjustment. And the mayor, we just had training on that, exceptional practical difficulty they would have to show. The Board of Adjustment can grant relief. It's the safety valve. It's called the Board of Adjustment because they get to adjust the zoning code.
Okay. Just last question, what Councilperson Day mentioned, is there, to your knowledge, an open application who has a vested interest that would be exempt by this?
Yes, so
Section 8.
I'm trying to stay away from specific developments, but there was the one that Mr. Tree, I can't remember the name, that Mr. Tracy was in. Maybe Chris can help me with that one, where they had the orphan parcel.
Battery.
Battery, thank you. That had an orphan parcel, so that's already been it's been through planning. That would be exempted from this ordinance. Somebody came in today and they submitted a complete application, and I'm not aware of anybody who did, but if they did, they would be exempted from the ordinance. So.
But that is the only one to your knowledge, Chris.
That's
Yes,
pending,
correct.
yes.
It just helps make the decision. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a two-step process. First, we have to move the amendment to section 8. And if we approve the amendment, then we vote on the ordinance in its entirety. So is there a motion to amend section 8 as proposed?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor of the amendment? Aye. Okay, the amendment passed. Are we ready to vote on the ordinance as a whole? Okay, we need a roll call vote for that, please, Ms. Wyrick.
Council President Suzanne Souter,
Yes.
Councilperson Joseph Day,
Yes.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka,
Yes.
Councilperson Andrew Zelt,
Yes.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Yes.
Okay. Passed.
Just so we're clear, the moratorium ordinance has the same language, like there's that exact same language, so it's consistent with everything.
Okay, so now as Mr. Walton said, the next item is 549, the moratorium. We've heard public comment on this tonight. I'm sorry, 550, yes. It's 550. So is there comments or questions from council about this one?
I do have some questions.
Okay.
And some, actually a bunch of questions. So generally, when a jurisdiction considers a moratorium, there's an emergency situation, or this is a really drastic measure for a jurisdiction to take. Basically, we're stopping development. We've had a plan in this town with the downtown gateway districts. We had public hearings. This is expressly what we wanted in these downtown gateway districts, and now we're shutting it down. There's so many questions with the ordinance. Who is actually performing the evaluation? Where's the budget money coming from? Who's doing the evaluation? I don't know where the budget money comes from. I don't know why a year is exactly the time that, December 9th is picking out the dates. I'm kind of interested in who's going to pick out the hypotheticals to say, all right, well, if this was built here, is MSC ready for that, or the police department ready for that? I mean, I'm very confused. This case seems like it came out of nowhere. I have not heard any of the services come to me or say anything that they couldn't meet the demand. Now, I know there's been a lot of apartment complexes come before council. I don't think this city's had an apartment built in 5 years. I know there's a traffic problem in the city, but the traffic problem is the cut through. I don't think it's residential traffic that we're having a problem with. My mind's eye and what I see in the street every day is the cut throughs coming from the beach in New Jersey and everywhere else. I don't see where putting a moratorium in place helps any of us. There's a housing crisis in the state. We're 20,000 units short in the whole state. I don't think Newcastle is going to make that up. But at the same point, I look, the interest rates are high. We hear from young professionals they can't afford to live on their own. And I mean, we're shutting things down. To go on, I'm looking at the rents at the Helm, the Garrison, and the Deemers. So the minimum at the Helm is $1,835 a month. The minimum at the Garrison is $1,450 a month. And the minimum at Deemers is $1,795 a month. none of them are low income or, you know, people, I hear people think that we're gonna have a bunch of low income residents, or it's gonna be Section 8, or it's gonna be this and that. And I just don't see that. I haven't seen that in any of the apartments. I'm just not sure what we are fixing here. And like, where's the plan? Who's doing it? When is it starting? Who's doing the evaluations? I just have so many questions here. I don't think I can support this the way that it is. Lastly, we are going to shut down development, and in an ordinance in a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about taxes and putting in taxes, adding additional wage and lodging taxes. So in one hand, we're going to say, no, we don't want no more property taxes. But in another hand, we're going to say, yeah, we want to add a wage tax and a lodging tax. So, and I'll get into that in that ordinance, but we're given some mixed messages here. And I'm certainly not in favor of this ordinance. I think it needs to be more thought out. We need to have some kind of real plan in place if we're going to do this. And again, we haven't built an apartment in 5 years. When I go through the list of apartments that we've approved, I don't think River Edge has moved at all. I don't think anything's been done there. 7th Street, 610 West 7th Street, it was originally submitted, 4 or 5 years ago. Nothing's happened there. I mean, we talk about this and I don't see, and Jeff, please correct me, am I wrong? Is there anyone that's actually working their sites for apartment complexes?
Right now, we have minor construction, the base work, they're still dealing with environmental problems for those 27 units of Cirillos across from Avex. And the battery has gotten a breakthrough, finally we're getting their federal permitting. And that one probably will proceed forward.
Thank
It looks like that one's gonna go.
400.
It's the big one is still a hope, a wish.
Yep.
When you say the big one, you mean Lucan's Drive?
No, I'm sorry, I was meaning 610 West.
Oh, the one on the other side of Washington Street.
The old Avex plant.
Right.
And actually the one in River Edge Industrial Park is stuck on some environmental issues and some historic issues, and that's a maybe.
So I just did have one more question. So in section 6, Max, it says non-pro-tunc.
That means going back to that date. I hate the Latin, by the way. I would have never written it that way.
So it's going back to the date of the introduction of this ordinance. So what problems does that pose?
I don't believe there's any project that has come in since and I don't think there's anything there. If you wanted to amend it and just say, it's effective upon adoption, that's fine. Generally, again, I don't know that I'd have written it that way. But I'm not aware, and nobody's brought to my attention anything that's gonna impact Joe.
Okay, well, my point being is that if for some reason this does get passed, obviously without my support, I would say that it should be the effective date of the ordinance. So you could imagine someone putting a contract on land and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, get plans done and developed, and us changing the rules midstream. It's just fundamentally not right. You know what I mean? If you don't like the laws, we change them. But to change the rules in the middle of the game is not right either. It tells business, it tells development, you know what I mean? That you're not here for them. And I am all about protecting your residents, but I don't see what this moratorium does for the city. I'm done. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm very much in agreement with Councilperson Day on a lot of the items he discussed. Section 3 of this, I have a lot of concerns of the evaluation impact is, again, is there a budget? Who's gonna be doing this? Do we have a plan on what we're evaluating against? There's a lot of information here. And hold things up for a year, maybe we should be doing this overall for our community, not holding this up. And something we can do, but stop what's happening without a lot of detail of how we're gonna be doing this. I'm not for this as well.
Got 600 houses on the drawings. Come on.
Public comments are over, Mr. Gross. Anyone else?
Yeah, I respect everyone. I respect all their opinions. But I am for this ordinance. I am for this ordinance, and I'll start with this. Section 11, municipal power, P, to regulate the control and erection of buildings within said city and to require licenses or permits to be taken out before the erection or repair of any building. Section AA, to exercise all municipal powers necessary to the proper administration of municipal government and for the well-being of its inhabitants, said city, whether said powers are expressly enumerated herein or not. S, to make and enforce within said city such fire, police, and other regulations as may be deemed expedient to protect persons and property, maintain the public peace, prevent crimes, and promote public morals. T, to establish, direct, and administer police, fire departments, and to appoint such police, fire, prevention, and other suitable personnel to enforce the city's laws, ordinances, and regulations, and the laws of the state at the same time as may be amended from time to time, and to otherwise preserve the peace within the limits of the city, and said police personnel having full right to pursue and arrest beyond the limits of the city and violate. M, to grant licenses or permits for any lawful purpose and to define the purposes for which licenses or permits shall be required. Now that protocol has been established, the city of Newcastle has gone through unprecedented change since 2000. It has been stark and it has been staggering. New city administrator, entirely new council with except for one person, new mayor, entirely new planning commission, entirely new MSC commission board, new city engineer, new city solicitor. The contractor who completed the work for the 2020 comprehensive plan isn't our current provider who will be working on our mid-cycle plan in 2025. Environmentally, rising sea levels for a coastal city that's 3.1 square miles, that's up against the river on one side and the railroad on another. Infrastructure that is literally sinking. Active Superfund sites. Active Superfund sites. There is a need to implement traffic calming strategies, necessary infrastructure improvements to Route 9 and two of the most treacherous roads and intersections in the state, ferry cutoff and Route 9 by 3 countries. Sluice gate technology and improvements. Right now, we have people manually going out and doing it. We need to improve and get into updated technology. This is the city of Newcastle. Thoughtful and pragmatic has been here since our founding. The construction of this town, the center core on Delaware Street, law, the courthouse, order, the jail, defense, the armory, faith, the church, ancestors, the graveyard. Thoughtful and pragmatic. William Penn was strategic and pragmatic when he surveyed the land. City and the trust were strategic and pragmatic when they combined forces to acquire Battery Park. Residents of yesteryear were strategic and pragmatic as they deeded over land to the city for alleyways on the sides of their homes for the city's use. Residents were strategic and pragmatic as they passed down things to future homeowners when they carved their initials in fireplaces, took pictures, or wrote in journals. I know that there's some questions around implementation. Some of it has been talked about today. So Del Dot's coming. They say they're coming, but they said they were coming too. So they're gonna be doing some, infrastructure, improvements to, the railroad and the ferry cutoff. So that's a measure. Do they do it? They not do it. When does it get done? We don't have to do anything. Let them. Thank you. We just have to let them do what they say they're gonna do and hold them to it. I've had conversations with WMAPCO. In 2003, 2005. 2005, they came to the city of Newcastle and they did a walkable community workshop. I have it right here. Many of the challenges that were talked about in 2005 still persist today. They are ready to come out and do a walkable workshop that will improve. Several months ago and for ongoing years, we've heard people talk about speed and traffic. They can help us with traffic calming strategies, and they will do it for free. I've been in contact with people from the EPA. They will come out and do community workshops to talk about the mitigation of the active Superfund sites and what's ongoing. That is no fee to the city or anything like that. I've been in conversations with MSC. They are purchasing technology where they can do pro forma analysis based upon usage and growth of the city. That technology will be coming to them next year. We understand that our first responder colleagues can and will do some analyses in regards to a number of runs or EMS things of that nature and how we prepare for the growth of our city. I'll stop there. I can continue.
Just a couple questions, Madam President, if I could ask them.
Certainly.
So it comes back down to who's doing the evaluation and who's paying for it. Because if we put out an RFP today to do an evaluation, we're probably 90 days out, just doing an RFP to hire somebody to do this. And then we got to budget the money to do it. I'm not arguing that we can't put this in place. And I think that's a great wish list of things that we want to get done in the city. I just don't see what a moratorium on the development has anything to do with that wish list. We could certainly have the EPA come out and do, and DelDOT's going to come out, but the traffic infrastructure stuff that we have is all DelDOT related. We can advocate for our senator and representative to get us money, but Newcastle doesn't have the money itself to pay for these infrastructure improvements on our main intersections. That's beyond our capabilities. Not to mention, the state has control over them roads. So I don't understand the correlation between an apartment moratorium and some of the things that were mentioned, but I still will go back to say, all right, who's doing the evaluation and how much is it costing? Thank you.
In 2025, the city will be doing a mid-cycle comprehensive plan review. So that's something that we will be undertaking coincidentally at the same time period. We have an ability to look at zones, codes, are things appropriate, and amend our city charter. Oftentimes, when you look outside the city at the county, state, federal levels, or through nonprofit organizations that are aligned with what you're trying to do, the first question is it in your comprehensive plan? And so we have a moment in time to course correct, to add these things to our comprehensive plan and to our codes to better enhance our city, give us an ability to better respond to residents and visitors, and be thoughtful and pragmatic with what we do. For example, right now within the city code, new structures are not required to have sprinklers. I think that's shameful.
Mr. Zabak?
I'll let this, I think it's here.
The only thing that I'll say is, I don't disagree that at the update to the comprehensive plan, we can look at some of this stuff. But what we're talking about here and the evaluations is a lot bigger than an update to a comprehensive plan. And if I'm wrong, please, Chris, say something, but I believe what you're talking about in this ordinance isn't just an update to the comprehensive plan. It's much, much larger than that. That's it. Thank you.
You know, with respect, an update to a comprehensive plan is a high level view of your vision for your city. And what has been mentioned is the 5-year review. You have to update your comprehensive plan every 10 years. You have to review your comprehensive plan every 5 years to make sure it's still meeting your needs. So whether we're talking about a 5-year review or a 10-year update, the types of studies that I'm inferring from section 3 are not the type of studies, detailed studies you really get into when you're doing a comprehensive plan. You don't do, traffic studies. You may have workshops on adequacy of your services, or get public input on what people think needs to be done. But you really typically don't get into deep dives determining ingress and egress to and from the city, first responder capabilities. You set the vision, you set the general land use tone in your comprehensive plan, you set goals and objectives, and a lot of those visions and goals and objectives maybe drive your zoning and drive other things that you want to do, but they're not the studies really that are mentioned in the types of studies that are mentioned in section 3 aren't typically done as part of a comprehensive planning process, in my opinion, and in my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. You got anything further?
We also have access to Planner Rogers. We have access to city engineer. Currently, right now, for a number of years, we have a flood resiliency committee that acquired a grant. We understand they ran into some hiccups, but they're actively working on doing smaller projects to make our city more suitable, more safe. This is simply a pause. This is simply saying the city has gone through tremendous change and stark change. And for me, this council meeting marks my year anniversary. This to me simply makes me harken back to the oath I took 1 year ago. I, Brian Mattaway, do solemnly swear to carry out the responsibilities of the office of City Council for the City of Newcastle to the best of my ability, freely acknowledging the powers of this office flow from the people that I am privileged to represent. I further swear always to place the public interest of any special or personal interest, and to respect the right of future generations to share in the rich historic and natural heritage of Delaware. In doing so, I will always uphold and defend the Constitution of my country, my state, so help me God.
Hi, everybody, again. This is, personally, I'll just start off and say that this is interesting ordinance, to say the least, very complex. So there's a lot of half of me's leaning one way, half of me's leaning the other way. I'm just gonna start off with that. I personally see a planned review for 2025 as an opportunity for several things happening in our city, including this short-term units could be bundled into that. But I think there's several opportunities that we have as a city right now that can be, entrusted to us undergo this exercise as a city comprehensively, including resident review and workshops to determine, and this is kind of probably the most critical part that I'm trying to understand, have we reached or perhaps surpassed the vision set in 2020 in a comprehensive plan? So I think that's what Councilperson Day and Councilperson Mattaway are arguing here in a sense, you know, I honestly don't know. So I think I am scared on one side that we may have, you know, approved way too many apartment complexes one end, right? So we're doubling or whatever the percentages of our town population. But on the other hand, there's a lot of prices, and to Councilperson Day's statistics about rent prices, we're not having, when we're spoken here by developers saying it's affordable housing, it's not really affordable, it's really market price housing. But that market price is not 800, 1,000, 1,200, and I hope nobody's laughing at me. I'm just saying, this is not, you know, what you would think maybe is affordable, right? So those are the challenges that I'm having, and potentially what Councilperson Matterway is alluding to that we may have to look into as we are changing zoning or regulations around buildings approvals. And it's also difficult to sit here and make decisions about gray areas as if we know what the future holds, but that is the kind of the swing you take with visions, right? When you set the vision. But it is difficult to say, yes, we can see this building work out here without knowing how our roads are gonna look like, without knowing the actual traffic studies, because I was the first one to point out a lot of the traffic studies were using COVID numbers, and they were still D rating. So I'm like, D is first of all not a good rating. We're being convinced that that's a acceptable rating, and I understand that in traffic terms. But also we're talking from a state of emergency, right? So like not everybody's driving. So like there's a lot of these things that you can't do a lot about it, but you know, you have to kind of be looking into those little things that tell you perhaps there's more to this. And then also on top of that, we have a huge issue with drainage here that sometimes cut off parts of our city, not one, but multiple areas. So it is difficult to look at these new developments and proposals from that perspective and say, I can see the work there. And actually I can see how building this will actually improve drainage and the roads, but it is still a concern. So I want you guys to know that these are all the concerns that Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and Council takes into consideration. So it is difficult sitting here thinking about this ordinance, because I do think maybe better, I'm little leaning over to review, taking this review as an opportunity to include this and taking the update, schedule update every 10 years and reviews to include these types of analyses that we were just told that they're not typical, because I think traffic impact studies should be something that we talk about as we're setting vision, because we should know utilities, we should know the capacity of our town in every neighborhood. So I think just because of the timing with a comprehensive plan review in 2025, I would probably lean towards leaving that to lead this conversation, because I would love to see this being discussed there. But I'm also fearful that what if a large complex gets in the meantime approved and we're not necessarily ready? So I'm just brutally honest with you right now that I'm struggling to decide where to lean on this, but I'm slightly leaning towards voting no, just because I think we can use comprehensive plan review to do that. And I do truly agree that promises versus actual steps, I was blown away. And this is one of those things where you shouldn't be blown away because it's politics, and I understand coming from me. It's a little cynical, but promises versus actual steps and results is an issue in this town. The flood issue is not a new issue to our town. Road issue is not, walkable community is not an issue that is recent. So it is, you see these plans and comprehensive plans that look very much alike every 10, 15 years and with slight changes to them. So it is worrisome how fast the needle is moving. But to Councilperson Day's point, it costs a lot of money. To do that. So I'm just gonna stop there because I feel like I'm going in a circle. But I did have one question for either Mr. Rogers or Mr. Bergstrom. If you guys can tell me how many units we have approved since the comprehensive plan update in 2020, just curious, and how many, potential residents that would be to the city. I know some were built, some are still not built. I'm just curious,
2020, the report you were provided with showing those different proposed construction.
Can you just use a microphone, Jeff? Sorry.
if you looked at the reports you were given about the different apartment complexes, those numbers are good. That there's nothing hiding in the.
No, I'm not,
So there's over 1,200 apartments that have been approved, that are in the pipeline, that have not been built. When you add in what has been approved to, people refer to as the St. Peter's Triangle, it's even more.
100 apartment units, sorry, or?
Yes, units. Additionally, the community south of Dobbinsville has 69 homes currently built there. They're gonna go to 202.
That was what? Can you repeat that?
The senior community, has currently 69 homes built. They will go to 202. And there's been over 1,200 apartment units that have been approved in the city with no shovels in the ground, plus whatever has been approved. It's been out there maybe for a decade with St. Peter's Triangle.
Thank you. Now, Jeff, I was just asking the number just to get a sense of the rate at which we have, increased. I was just trying to answer a question about the rate at which we as a city have, increased in size virtually, not necessarily physically right now, but, approved projects that may happen 5 years from now, 10 or 3.
One thing that you might be thinking about and not that saying is the ratio of owner occupied housing to apartment housing. While we've been increasing apartment housing dramatically, and we're now at the rate that you know about, we're also increasing single family homes, owner occupied homes. So it's always hard to say. For example, 27 units that are across from the AVEX site are proposed to be condos, not rentals.
Okay, so.
And many of the units in the Lucan's Drive project are either single-family homes or townhouses, so they're not all apartments. It's total number of units that he's talking about is right, but they're not all apartments.
I understand, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And for me, a lot of what we're talking about today, and we'll talk about, it's all circular. The desire to give resident firefighters and, residents who are volunteer firefighters an incentive for choosing to come when other people want to run is all related to this. We have an aging community where rates of cardiac arrest, et cetera, are only going to increase. We have a dearth of volunteer firefighters across the state. This is about safety and security. Again, for me, leadership isn't about making decisions and being a boss. It's about the people that are under your charge.
Okay. I guess my thoughts on all this are somewhat in line with Mr. Day's. Much of what the goal of this moratorium is far beyond what can be accomplished in a year, even if we had plenty of money. And some of the things that you complain we don't do are done. Have you heard of the Delaware Plus system, which preliminary land use study, I think it stands for?
Service review.
Service review, which when a new project is proposed, the first thing that happens is the state looks at it. It looks at the traffic, it looks at the utilities, it looks at the drainage, it looks at the impact on the school system. All that has to be considered before the project even begins to move forward. So we're not ignoring all those things. And the issue of affordable housing, I mean, as several have said, when you say affordable housing, some people go, oh my God, Section 8. No, that's not what it means. But do we want our young police officers to live in town? They can't afford any housing that's currently in town. Now, my understanding is that the Battery apartments are going to be at a slightly lower price point than the Garrison and the Deemer's Landing apartments. So that's potentially a place where those folks could live. Our beginning teachers in the Colonial school system, would we like to have them live in our community? Where can they afford to live? They don't make a whole lot of money. And so to me, shutting things down for a year tells potential developers, this isn't a place I want to do business with, because they're going to jerked the rug out from under me partway through after I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars developing plans, hiring lawyers, working up architectural drawings. And the comp plan review was going to go forward no matter what, whether we do pass this or not, that's part of the process. And how do you do an abstract traffic study? When a new development is proposed, okay, a developer wants to put X number of units in this location. So you look at what's around it, what the roads are, they go out 3 intersections from that development, what's already there, what other things are in the pipeline in that area. You have specific criteria to evaluate. To just say blanketly, well, how's our traffic? I don't even know what they would look at because there's nothing specific there like there is when you're dealing with a particular project. And the projects, if we consider each project on its own merit, and that includes looking at it in conjunction with what's already in the pipeline. Nothing is considered in it all by itself. So I have to agree with Mr. Day and Mr. Zelt that I am not in favor of this.
So, you know, at the end of the day, you gotta vote your conscience. And I got mirrors in my house and I look at them. You know, my concern is for young people, but it's also for our elders who are getting priced out, whose rent is getting raised $200-300 every year. And anytime someone talks to me about affordability, I'm going to talk about accessibility. How accessible is it? How many people do you know in this community that got aged out of this community? Where did they go?
And how does reducing the volume, the supply of housing decrease the price? I only took elementary or basic economics, but supply and demand. If you limit the supply, you're gonna raise the price.
No, that's unfortunately, that's not what's the economics of the case. You know, how much is too much?
Okay, are we ready to take a vote on this?
Yeah, you would need a motion and a second, and the motion should be in the affirmative. If you're in favor of it, say yes, and if you're against it, say no.
Right, okay. So is there a motion to take a vote on this ordinance? To approve or deny this ordinance?
Should be a motion to approve the ordinance.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this ordinance? Motion, is there a second? Okay, Ms. Warwick, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Suzanne Souter.
No.
Councilperson Joseph Day.
No.
Councilperson Andrew Zelt.
No.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka.
No, big concern and hope that we can implement a lot of this in our comprehensive review.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Yes, for the people.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion is not adopted. Or the ordinance is not adopted. Okay. We've been at this for about 3 hours. I would like to take a small break, maybe 10 minutes, and we'll be back. Time to. We're calling the meeting back to order. We're going to resume our meeting. I don't know if the folks in the lobby want to come in or if you're headed home, but just to let you know. The next item is ordinance 551 to amend this tax code to add an incentive for firefighters, resident firefighters. So we have the public hearing on this. Is there discussion among council?
I had a question on this. I understand that for resident firefighters, we thought of expanding this to consider other public services, nonprofit situations for people in our community. It just seems that we're just hitting just the firefighters. Why not other situations of public service
Well, that are out there. I think, if I may speak, to Mr. Matterway's ordinance, but the firefighters do a lot more than just, I mean, lots of people are involved with many nonprofit organizations in town and they contribute significantly, but they're not putting their lives on the line the way the firefighters do. And they're not working overnight shifts and they're not called out in the middle of the night. And it's just a whole different level of commitment in my book. But
I'm not debating that. I'm just thinking there's other public service, areas out there that we might want to consider. We have the library, we have, even our people working for us in our areas. I'm trying to understand is,
but they get paid.
well, I'm looking as an active member, career or volunteer, so this is also for paid firefighters as well. So, I mean, I know the people working in our public library, they're helping out and doing good things as well.
Well, that's something that could always be considered in the future. Passing this without that doesn't mean that couldn't come up for discussion in the future.
So can we consider that now?
Sure.
Steve, can I ask how many of the career staff at the fire company actually live here in town that actually are paid through the fire?
None of the 10 career members or 35 part-time employees live in the city, with the exception of one, our administrator.
So one person.
The rest are volunteers. They get paid. And it's kind of like the police. The police don't live where they work for the most part. With some exceptions. There was, what was the one that I moved over and
But yeah, many of the police officers do not live in town. I mean, then you can sort of understand that. They don't want to run into people at the grocery store after they gave us traffic ticket the night before. But anyway, Mr. Matterway, this was your ordinance.
Yes.
Did you have anything you wanted to add about it?
I do. Thank you, Council President. So, first, I think it's procedure to identify, what's an active member. And in respect to the Ladies Auxiliary, an active member is any person who's over 18 years old and they attend 50% of the business meetings and 50% of all activities. In respect to the Goodwill Fire Company, an active member must complete 75 hours of company-related activities per year during the period of October 1 of the preceding year to September 30 of the current year. In respect to the Ladies Auxiliary and the Goodwill Fire Company, the numbers are about 12 volunteers in respect to the Goodwill and about a dozen in respect to the Ladies Auxiliary that currently would fit into this ordinance eligibility potentially. June 3rd, 2021, the 151st General Assembly in the state of Delaware said that volunteer firefighter recruitment is a statewide issue. As a result, a bipartisan subject matter task force was convened. It included a group of senators, state representatives, representation from the Department of Health and Social Services, representation from Delaware Emergency Management Agency, et cetera. I have here the report, and they identified the following. There was a shortage of volunteer firefighters in the state of Delaware. Volunteer firefighter service first responders are the first line of defense to emergencies in our communities. The problems the volunteer fire service is facing are significant and require action from the Delaware General Assembly. Sufficient staffing must be established and stabilized to ensure the quality of service provided while the volunteer fire service is maintained. They talk about a statewide treatment and retention program that they feel are needed, et cetera. So to be clear, again, as I mentioned earlier, all these ordinances and things that I'm putting forward are Newcastle First agenda and people sponsored. And this is an effort to be aggressive, progressive, and thoughtful about sustaining, maintaining, and thriving of the city of Newcastle today, tomorrow, and forever. This is not about dollars and cents. It's about life, death, and community building. This is about taking care of the people that take care of you when you're at your most vulnerable moments of life. When you're scared and when you're crying, you go running and hope someone comes coming. The Goodwill Fire Company kept the city from burning to the ground in the Great Fire. The Goodwill Fire Company responded in 1980 to the Amico fire. Today, the Goodwill Fire Company comes when Route 9 is flooded out consistently, unfortunately. Fact is that we live in an aging community. Our community is growing and we need to do everything possible to be prepared to provide the fabric of civilization. To be clear, I hope this is a recruiting tool in a small way. The reality is that to date, we have over 1,000 units that have been approved. How many more fire, EMS, and first responders will it require? Wouldn't you rather be recognized as a neighbor and friend and not a stranger when they come?
I can start. Thank you, Councilperson Mataway, for bringing this ordinance. I think hopefully this is one in many future ways that we as a city can think about repaying folks who are willing to put their lives online for, their neighbors. And I'm in full support of this ordinance. And agree to, a lot of the stuff that Councilperson Mataway already mentioned. Not sure of the results of the recruitment initially, but I hope that these are the positive signals that we send as a city. That over time, several of these different signals can help people determine, this is the place I want to work, reside, live, and enjoy.
Mr. Day, did you have any comments?
Yes, I had a question first. What is the average tax bill for a city resident? Anybody know, just roughly?
I can tell you, off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, I was just trying to gauge it. I didn't know if this would be, 50% or 75% of an average bill, but I was just kind of wondering.
So my house's tax bill is about 940 a year. My house is, none of them are, it's rated at 75, because none of them are really are. So I don't know if I'm average or not.
Yeah, and I think ours is in the 800 and something range, so this would, for a couple, it might, because the maximum is 900. For a couple, it could actually be their entire tax bill. But where both members of the couple were qualified. But I don't know how many people would meet that criteria. For one person in the household to qualify, might be half to 2/3, depends on the value of the house.
If there's thought or consideration to increasing it, I would support it. This was meant to be a step in the right direction and to be a symbol of hopefully more to come.
It's 900 per house, so like you said, whether.
Yeah, it's possible if the couple qualifies that it would almost or completely eliminate their tax bill, but.
But I don't even think that's the case here with the numbers stated.
No.
As a chief.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve this ordinance? Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Rake, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Suzanne Souter.
Yes.
Councilperson Joseph Day.
Yes.
Councilperson Nerman Zubaka.
Yes.
Councilperson Andrew Zell.
Yes.
Councilperson Brian Mataway.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance is adopted. All right. That gets us. Okay, the next item is a resolution to affirm the city's cost sharing of contributions to the state of Delaware Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. Just briefly,
I can speak to this.
I was going to say, yeah, Ms. Cantillo can tell us about this.
Thank you. So we did speak about this during the budget season, the lengthy budget season. So I just wanted to put forward a resolution to affirm what we discussed. The state of Delaware has established the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. It offers things like paid family leave for maternity and paternity, or for helping a family member through a medical event. The fund will begin requiring payment and contribution from employees and employers January 1st. Decisions have to be made by December 1st. The contribution is 0.8%, and employers have to make the decision of how they're going to cost share that with their employees. During the budget season, we discussed the contribution of us as the employer, 0.4%, and the cost of the employee, 0.4%. So we would split that cost. And this resolution just affirms that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read the resolution, and then if there's any discussion, we can have that. Resolution 2024-41, a resolution to affirm the city's cost sharing contributions to the state of Delaware Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program. Whereas pursuant to the state of Delaware's Healthy Families Act of 19 Delaware Code Section 3701 and following, called the Act, the city intends to enroll in the public family and medical leave insurance program administered by the state. Whereas under the Act, payroll contributions are authorized to finance the payment of benefits available under the Act, and the city will be required, beginning January 1st, 2025, to remit contributions to the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Account Fund, the fund, for which the city is permitted to require its employees to contribute up to half the cost. And whereas the city, during its fiscal 25 budget process, discussed the paid family and medical leave program and determined that it would share the cost of payroll contributions to the fund, consistent with the Act, so that 0.4% of the city employees' weekly wages are remitted to the fund, and the city will contribute the remaining 0.4% of the employees' weekly wages to the fund. And now therefore be it resolved that the city of Newcastle hereby affirms its decision to share the cost of contributions to the fund equally with city employees, so that the city contribution is 0.4% and the employee's contribution is 0.4% of the employee's weekly wage. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect January 1st, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the or is there discussion?
I just had a couple of questions. I'm assuming this was something we already budgeted in the process for all of the employees, correct?
Correct, at the cost share of half and half.
And is the enrollment for employees or once we?
No, it's a requirement for the state.
So the only moving part here is decision of splitting this in up to 50%. Is that correct? Okay. And this would be applicable to unionized employees as well?
Yes, for all employees. So the program starts for contributions January 1st, 2025, but no one in the state can access it until January 1st, 2026. So they have a year of funding.
They're building up the fund.
Correct.
Understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Motion to approve resolution number 2024-41.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Madam President, if there's anyone waiting for an appointment, I say we take them next. I don't know if
Yeah,
there
Ms.
is,
Smith, yes. Since she's
but-
sitting here very kindly, that's true. So we will jump ahead in the agenda to item 5, the appointment of Florence Smith to the Flood Advisory Committee. Or Flood Resiliency Committee. So resolution 2024-45, a resolution to appoint Florence Smith to the Flood Resiliency Committee. Whereas this Newcastle City Council established the Sea Level Rise Task Force by resolution 2024-04, and whereas resolution 2023-32 converted that task force to a permanent committee known as the Flood Resiliency Committee. And whereas there's currently a vacancy on this committee to which Ms. Smith has agreed to be appointed. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby appoints the following person to the Flood Resiliency Committee. Florence Smith, Flood Resiliency Committee, term ending December 31st, 2027. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
So I forgot to mention, Ms. Smith provided us with some information about herself.
Yeah, resident.
Okay, so we've had a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The resolution's adopted. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
The next one is resolution 2024-12. An appointment to the reappointment to the Tree Advisory Committee.
Excuse me, Council President. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry. My eyes are getting blurry here.
You want me to read it? I'm not doing it.
Okay, sure. Madam Mayor, would you please read resolution 2024-42?
Resolution 2024-42, a resolution reappointing Art Walker to the Tree Advisory Commission. Whereas the Newcastle City Council passed ordinance 500 to amend and restate chapter 74 relating to the Tree Commission and chapter 210 of the Code of the City of Newcastle relating to street trees, creating the Tree Advisory Commission. And whereas pursuant to 74-1 of the Code, the Tree Advisory Commission shall consist of 5 members, each serving a 3-year term. 2 members shall be appointed by the mayor of Newcastle and confirmed by City Council, and 3 shall be appointed by City Council. And whereas members of the Tree Advisory Commission may serve up to 2 terms, and whereas members shall be selected on the basis of education, experience, or demonstrated interest in related fields. Members need not be city residents. And whereas Mr. Walker has served 1 term on the Tree Advisory Commission and is willing to be reappointed. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby reappoints the following person to serve on the Tree Advisory Commission to a term which expires December 11, 2027. Art Walker, Tree Advisory Commission, term expiring December 11, 2027.
Thank you. Is there a motion to, we've been provided with information about Mr. Walker and he has already served 1 term. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve resolution 2024-42.
Is there a second? All in favor? Pass. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, next one. Another tree advisory, so Madam Mayor.
Resolution 2024-43, a resolution approving the mayor's appointment of Edward Ryan to the Tree Advisory Commission. Whereas the Newcastle City Council passed ordinance 500 to amend and restate chapter 74 relating to the Tree Commission and chapter 210 of the Code of the City of Newcastle relating to street trees, creating the Street Advisory Commission. And whereas pursuant to 74-1 of the Code, the Tree Advisory Commission shall consist of 5 members, each serving a 3-year term. 2 members shall be appointed by the mayor of Newcastle and confirmed by City Council, and 3 shall be appointed by City Council. And whereas members shall be selected on the basis of education, experience, or demonstrated interest in the related field. Members need not be city residents. And whereas there's currently 1 vacant position on the Tree Advisory Commission to be appointed by the mayor. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby approves the mayor's appointment of the following person to serve on the Tree Advisory Commission to fulfill the vacant position which expires November 13th, 2027. Edward Ryan, Tree Advisory Commission, term expires November 13th, 2027.
Thank you. And Mr. Ryan has also provided information about himself to the members of council. Is there a motion to approve this resolution? Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. The resolution's adopted.
And we are lucky, they mentioned it, that we do have these guys on the tree commission. They are doing an amazing.
They are, they are doing a very good job. Okay, I think I can read this one, thank you. The next one is resolution 2024-44, a resolution approving the reappointment of Connie Reese to the Board of Elections. Whereas the Newcastle City Charter details that the responsibility for conducting all municipal elections in the city of Newcastle shall be vested with the Board of Elections. And whereas the charter further provides that each member of city council shall appoint one qualified elector who is also a resident of the city to serve as a member of said board. And whereas Ms. Reese's current appointment to the Board of Elections expired November 9th, 2024, and whereas the council proposes to confirm the reappointment of Connie Reese with that term ending on November 9th, 2028. Now therefore be it resolved that the city council hereby confirms the appointment of the following person to the Board of Elections. Connie Reese, appointed by council president, term ending November 9th, 2028. We don't have any information from Ms. Reese. She has been serving on this board, on the Board of Election.
Motion to approve resolution 2024-44.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. The next one is item 6 on the agenda, which is a vote on the planning commission rules, which council was given. I know the planning commission's been working on this for a while. It's basically like operational procedures that they're establishing for themselves. It's not, I don't know, it's not a formal resolution.
No, it's just an approval.
It's just
They're just asking for your blessing.
Right, basically, yeah, they've all discussed this and approved them among themselves. I've read through them, they seem very reasonable to me. So are we in agreement that we should give our blessing to this set of rules for the operating procedures for the planning commission?
I may just ask one clarifying question. I don't know if this is addressed for Max potentially, but are you just aware that all the code requirements from planning are still being followed under the current procedures? I think they are, but just wanted to get confirmation before I vote.
Yeah, I haven't studied everything 100%, but I read it, looks fine to me. Like there wasn't anything that jumped out at me.
And the rules do reference,
I know, I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that nothing's omitted.
Okay. So the rules are in compliance with our code and I know that we need a formal vote, but is there any, do we agree that we approve these rules?
You probably ought to have a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the rules they've submitted to us.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the rules are approved. Okay, now the paving contract. We got a lot of information with the specifications, but the key components are there were 2 bids, with about a $35,000 difference between the 2 firms. They're both firms that the city has dealt with in the past. And to the best of my knowledge, we've never had any, they've both done good work for us. One firm is Cirillo Brothers and the other is Grego and Ferrara. The bid from Cirillo Brothers was $692,072.50. And the bid from Grego and Ferrara was $726,179 even. Are there any questions about this? We're going to make a selection tonight as to which firm we award the bid to. All right, well,
Have we had any issues and, understand, city administrator is newer to the role. Maybe Mr. Bergstrom, if necessary, can speak to this. Has there been any issues with the, standard of care or work, provided by any of these, providers?
Never an issue with either one of these contractors. Equally qualified, capable of doing the work.
And they both met the requirements of the bid, submitted the proper documentation necessary as requested.
I have one question, W.
My only concern or question is regarding the repayments that are being done throughout the city in general. So I just wanted to address that to make sure that this is not, I don't know if it's overlooked, but on Harmony Street that was recently done, the payment goes over almost kind of like doesn't do us a favor when it comes to drainage. And the sidewalk is kind of like now closer, like to the road. So I don't know if this is addressed here, but I think I've seen somewhere 6 inches or something in a bid, but yes.
Those paving projects were not done by our contract.
Okay, so that was
They were
my next
done by the
question.
gas company, and they were done with, just to repair the damage they did to the road.
But with that being said, this bid package was for the items in the bond bill that we received funding for. Now that we, once we have a contract, we can look at other areas that may need more immediate attention and see if we have additional funding with maybe MSA or other funds within our budget to address those items.
And I don't know, if this is a question for Chris or Jeff, you guys know what I'm talking about, like a curving, is that addressed in a bid,
This is a
certain
mill.
standard? And
Yes.
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 okay, just want to make sure that we don't have scenario that repeats and then, we have drainage issues on top of, safety of, road being almost in line with the sidewalk.
Like
That's all.
right in front of my house.
Yeah, across the whole street, yeah,
And the whole street right
yeah,
there.
thank you. No other comments.
Okay,
How often, or when was the last time we awarded a contract to a contractor outside of these two? Have we issued, paving contracts to contractors outside?
Besides these two people?
Yes.
Neither one of them are located in the city, but we've issued to at least 4 other contractors, I remember. Everyone has an opportunity to bid. In fact, we go out of our way to solicit bids to get the biggest scope of qualified contractors we can get.
Okay, I'm asking the question for the record, so there's no, questions or concerns about, bid rigging or bid, monopolization.
Is there any concern with the timing with either one of them? Are they able to start immediately?
No, there was no concern with either of them.
But they may not start now. eh?
They still
Well-
have to, develop the plan and move forward.
yeah, I mean, our idea
Whether it's appropriate.
in moving forward with this tonight, even though it's very late, is so we can tell the winning firm that they got the bid so they can get us on their calendar, order the supplies, et cetera, et cetera.
There's always the issue of the plants shutting down during the winter time. So we hope to get these in, this work done this season, but there's a chance by the time, we get the contract awarded, the asphalt plants shut down and you have to have proper weather and temperatures to do the paving. So it's not a given that that these projects can be done, this season. Do you agree, Jeff?
I just wanted to clarify, the season, when you say that, mean by, the winter or by summer or, next year?
By winter.
The probability of a successful asphalt paving depends on a lot of things, but basically it is one big factor is the road temperature, the temperature of the earth before you apply the pavement. So you have your best chance for a really great asphalt job in August, probably.
So, yeah, that's fine.
It's still pretty good in January, but it gets way better by
I meant prior to winter. It'll definitely be done in the spring or
It won't be done, it won't be done in December, January, February.
Slim chances of it happening.
Some chance to,
But
Yeah.
takes.
Okay, I move that we, any further questions or comments?
I just wanted to say, I didn't expect it to be done, but then I heard it and I said, wait, there's a chance.
I move that we award the bid to Cirillo Brothers. It's the lower figure and they're both reliable firms who we've done business with in the past. There's a second or someone a counter proposal?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bids awarded to Cirillo. In the interest of time, we're going to omit item 8 from the agenda because we anticipate that may be a longer discussion and the charter change approvals are done by the state legislature in June, so we have some time to still get this in. So we'll defer that to a future month. I am going to do the first reading of ordinance 552. It's simply the reading. There's no discussion. We will have a public hearing and discussion probably next month.
Sure. Ordinance 552, an ordinance to establish a new chapter 77 in the Newcastle City Code related to election candidacy declaration requirements. Whereas the Council of the City of Newcastle, City Council, possesses the authority to adopt, amend, modify, or repeal the City of Newcastle Municipal Code. Whereas the City of Newcastle Charter establishes election procedures, Section 6, which include provisions regulating the process and requirements for declaring candidacy for election to city offices, in which states in relevant part that such persons shall file with the city his or her name, place of residence, and date designating the office for which he or she seeks to become a candidate no later than 5 p.m. local time of the last Friday in the month of February in the year of the election. Whereas the City Council desires to establish a new Chapter 77 to provide further regulations and guidance for city officials and residents regarding the proper method for declaring candidacy for election to city office. Proposed changes. And whereas the City Council finds that the proposed changes are consistent with 15 Delaware Chapter 755. Now therefore, making the express findings that the proposed changes outlined below enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Newcastle, the City Council of the City of Newcastle hereby ordains and adopts the following code changes and revisions. Section 1, amend City of Newcastle Code to adopt a new Chapter 77 relating to election candidacy declaration requirements, which shall read in its entirety as follows. Chapter 77, election candidacy declaration requirements. 71-1, purpose and intent. The purpose of this chapter is to provide for the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens and business of the City of Newcastle, the city, through the regulation of procedures for candidacy declaration in city elections, which are not provided for elsewhere in the city's code or charter. 77-2, procedures for candidacy declaration. The procedures for complying with the requirements set forth in the city charter shall be as follows. A, appropriate forms to be completed for candidacy declaration. The candidacy declaration packet will be made available to potential candidates at the administrative offices of the city, as well as via electronic means, including but not limited to posting on the city's website. B, the candidate filing form shall include the following statement. I certify that I meet the following requirements for office as set forth in Delaware Code 15, Delaware Code 7555, candidates eligibility declaration of candidacy, and the charter of the City of Newcastle. I will be at least 21 years of age as of the date of the election. I have been a resident of the City of Newcastle for at least 2 years. I'm a registered voter in the state of Delaware. I've never been convicted of felony. C, the completed candidacy declaration packet may be presented in person to the city administrator or another agent of the city so designated. Therefore, alternatively, completed candidacy declaration packet may be submitted electronically to the city administrator through any e-signature software that creates a legally binding electronic or digital signature. D, person seeking to declare candidacy must include with his or her candidacy declaration packet a completed and notarized affidavit, a form of which is included therewith, affirming that he or she meets the candidacy requirements set forth in the charter and Delaware Code 15, Delaware Chapter 755 to an email address provided upon issuance of the candidacy declaration packet. In addition to the notarized form, persons seeking to declare candidacy electronically shall also submit documents confirming proof of name and residency. E, in lieu of the electronically submitted candidacy declaration packet, persons seeking to declare candidacy may submit the candidacy declaration packet in person along with the notarized affidavit, provide proof of name, residency, and that he or she otherwise meets the requirements set forth in the charter. F, should there be any deficiency in the candidate's filing or evidence raising question of the candidate's qualification for office, the city administrator or other agent of the city so designated shall provide immediate notice to the candidate with the opportunity to rectify the deficiency in accordance with the guidelines outlined in Delaware Code 15, Delaware Chapter 55. G, where the charter requirements fix the deadline for declaration of candidacy in regular elections at 5 p.m. local time of the last Friday in the month of February in the year of the election. The deadline for declaration of candidacy for a special election shall be a date and time fixed by council as appropriate under the circumstances, but in no event less than 40 days prior to the scheduled election date. Section 2, inconsistent ordinances and resolutions repealed, or ordinances or parts of ordinances, and all resolutions or parts of resolutions that may be in direct conflict herewith are hereby repealed. Section 3, severability. The provisions of this ordinance shall be severable if any provisions of this ordinance are found by any court of competent jurisdiction to be unconstitutional or void. The remaining provisions of this ordinance shall remain valid unless the court finds that the valid provisions of this ordinance are so essentially and separately connected with and so dependent upon the unconstitutional or void provision that it cannot be presumed that the city council would have enacted the remaining valid provisions without the unconstitutional or void provision, or unless the court finds that the remaining valid provision standing alone are incomplete and incapable of being executed in accordance with the city council's intent. Effective date, the ordinance shall become effective upon approval by city council.
Thank you. Is this when, or do we have, would it be, is this appropriate or later to suggest that if we add that the candidate submits their package electronically is responsible confirming that it has been received?
That's an amendment that could be added during discussion, but not at this point.
Not right now.
Thank you. Okay, finally, the issue of the bed and breakfast, about which we heard a great deal tonight from the public. I'm just going to briefly summarize the current code. First of all, the existing zoning code for the historic residential area was established April the 9th, 1968. So it has been in place for quite a long time. The introduction to the historic residence district says the district is intended to preserve, promote, and protect the historic area, now predominantly residential, of the city in its colonial form. In order to achieve this intention, architectural review is provided for by this chapter. It is not an exclusive residential district. However, incompatible uses are prohibited. And then there's a list of 8 uses which are permitted as a matter of right, which is, different varieties of homes, single family, semi-detached, and so forth. But a key one is number 3, tourist homes. And elsewhere in the code, tourist home is defined as a dwelling in which overnight accommodations in no more than 5 guest rooms are provided or offered for transient guests for compensation. So that's what we've got now. As you can see, it's been in effect for a long time. I'm proposing that we refer this issue to the Planning Commission for their evaluation and recommendation. And in that light, I came up with some questions, and I'm going to read those, and perhaps council will want to add some more questions, and then we can refer it to the Planning Commission. And obviously, we will have a more extensive discussion of this after we get their recommendations. So this is what I came up with. Do we want to regulate Airbnbs? If so, in what way? Do we want to make a distinction between Airbnbs and more conventional B&Bs? If so, how would we make that distinction? Third, our current code regulates B&Bs as rentals. Although the code for rentals makes no mention of the length of rental contracts, Section 140-38G and 140-39B would seem to imply long-term rentals, as they make provision for an inspection when a new tenant occupies the premises. Do we want to create a separate section of our code for short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs? That's how some communities regulate them. How would we define short-term rental? Would this also apply to more traditional B&Bs? How would we distinguish between the two types? Do we want to prohibit any type of B&B in the historic residential zone? How would we monitor Airbnbs? Included in your packet was an article from the news from July in the News Journal regarding the difficulty of identifying Airbnbs, since they don't usually post signs out in front and so forth. Another option would be to change section 230-19 of our zoning code to remove tourist homes from the list of uses allowed as a matter of right and add B&Bs, which we'd have to decide whether we meant all types or just Airbnbs, to the list of uses allowed by special exception. If we did that, what conditions would we impose for the granting of special exceptions? They could include a limit to the number of rooms to be rented and or the number of guests allowed in each unit, a requirement for the provision of parking that does not unduly disrupt residents' parking, requiring the owner to include designated quiet hours in the listing and enforce them, and a requirement that the listing specifies that parties are prohibited in the rental unit and the owner must enforce this prohibition. Others, there are other possibilities as well in that list, and in addition to or instead of some of the ones I've listed. 6, some residents have requested that any restriction include existing businesses rather than only future ones. I understand there's some legal difficulties with this, which Mr. Walton, could you address that briefly?
I'm gonna have the opportunity to give my dissertation on vested rights at some point in time, but I'm not gonna do that at 10:20.
Thank you.
It would be my recommendation, if you were gonna limit existing use, you amortize it over a period of time. So in other words, and it wouldn't be eliminated on the day the ordinance is passed. In other words, it would give some time for that business to continue, which will try to keep you out of court. So you can put a limit on that, like bring it into conformity in 5 years or something like that. The way your code reads right now, once you have a legally existing non-conforming use that can continue in most instances, but you could make special provisions with respect to this ordinance to be amortized. We have to do it in 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. Well, I don't, whatever. You got the bullets. This big stack is what I've read so far on Airbnb. I'm not going to read anymore, so I have a little bit more direction. Brought that out for a fact. That's a lot of cases. Here's the 2 things. Of course, number 1, you don't want to be arbitrary and okay, you have to have a good reason to do what you do. You're a legislator, you respond to greater scrutiny on municipal legislators like yourselves when they're dealing with codes and trying to get through. So you have to have a good reason to do it. Number 2, it has to apply equally. Equally is making equal protection, right? You can't go after somebody, affect their liberty, interest, or whatever, right? You have a right to pursue an occupation. And you ban Airbnbs. Probably, based on the case law that I have here, would we have to put some protections in there to make sure you do it right? Yes. Because it could be arbitrary, it could be severe. That's probably a little bit more than you asked me for, but those are the 2 big takeaways when you're doing these ordinances based on this big old stack of papers.
Thank you. Okay, so and then any other questions any of you wanted to add to this list?
Just a couple comments. So I would take Airbnb and just move it to short-term rentals, because Airbnb is just a brand name.
Well,
it could be VRBO or anybody else.
Exactly, that's another issue, but
Just to be
yes.
clear, one of the things that I have seen jurisdictions do that we could add as a question, do we want to register them? Do we want to register short-term rentals? And then if we do register short-term rentals, do we want to have requirements on that? Like, for an example, having an emergency contact within the city limits.
I had suggested to city administrator and council president that maybe we actually pull the current business owners of short-term rentals, Dwayne, John Cochran, James Egerton, because they have a number of ones, and pull them together and say, if we were changing this, what would you like to see? Protects their business as well.
Okay, that could be another suggestion for the planning commission or for us when it comes back to us, or in between. Yeah, in between. So, any questions any of the rest of you would like to add?
My first question is regarding Board of Adjustment and Planning. And Max, could you help me understand why would this go to planning, not Board of Adjustment? Because this is literally zoning.
Board of Adjustment acts as a judge to adjust the current code.
Okay.
They have no legislative thing. The Planning Commission established under 22 Delaware Code 702. They're a recommending body. They recommend zoning ordinances or they can, sometimes you guys start it, goes to planning, when it comes back. They also have the right where you guys can say, investigate it sometimes. I think the planning, Chris can back me up on this. I think the planning commission would probably like, if you guys have any additional guidance that you want to give them, these questions on areas you're headed or what you're thinking, would be helpful to the planning commission, as they go through these, because the questions are great, but you guys might have different, it's a different group of people, right? So they might have very different, so I think they would enjoy, you have some guidance, give it to, Chris is here to take it down on their behalf. Chris, I don't mean to steal your thunder, but
Yes, I mean, I would agree with that, it would be helpful if the council could say, you're leaning towards, wanting to permit, Airbnbs or short-term rentals. What are some of the conditions, or where do you think it would be appropriate? If council were to, want to promote short-term rentals or to allow short-term rentals in the city, to ask the planning commission, are short-term rentals a good idea or a bad idea? That's really direction.
Focus it a little more and give some other options, such as the shifting them from being allowed by right to making them have to meet a special exception conditions.
As long as we know that, it's on the table that you're not against them, then we can work with the planning commission to come up with conditions and locations and registration ideas. But I would struggle to be in front of them saying, do you think Airbnbs or short-term rentals are a good idea or a bad idea? That's really, to me, that really rests here just to provide us some direction so we can.
Okay, well, personally, I'm not looking to ban them completely. I'm not speaking for anybody else because we haven't discussed it. Someone in the public comments made a reference to the difference in the definition of bed and breakfast or tourist home, between Newcastle code, which is no more than 5 rooms, and the state code, which is at least 5 rooms. Now, one person asserted that the state code says they can't have cooking facilities. I've looked at the state code and it doesn't mention cooking facilities. It simply says sleeping accommodations, which implies no cooking facilities, but it doesn't prohibit them directly. So I don't know where that goes. What happens when there's a conflict like that?
in this case, another case, this case, your code governs land use issues.
Okay. So we don't have to worry about the fact that the state.
Find it however they want to, that's for separate sets of regulations.
Yeah.
For land use within your city, your code governs.
Okay. So what do others think?
Madam President, I just wanted a couple comments. I agree that I think it makes sense for us to regulate them. I don't think it makes sense for us to completely ban them. But I do think that we should, register, regulate, whatever we need to do, put restrictions to make sure they are not interfering with their neighbors' peace and well-being.
I'm a little impartial to this because I'm originally from Bosnia, so my parents come every year. And the way Newcastle houses are small, as you all know, living here. So, and we have 2 kids, so it's a little hard to kind of find additional room for them to stay. So where they end up staying typically is Airbnb in Newcastle, and they have done that this past October, most recently. So I personally, see directly benefit of, these businesses, because I even reached out to apartments, complexes nearby asking, hey, would you rent for a month? I don't need a place for a month. I just, there's not many Airbnbs in town basically available. So it's almost like, we don't, to Mayor's point, we have a handful of people own short-term rentals, not just Airbnbs, right? So that's my perspective on this, because I'm an end user, and my wife and I wanted to buy that house on the alley in question. So we're thinking, the staycation example that Mr. Reeves was saying, we want to explore this because this was one of our, destination areas. But, so I'm struggling to find how visitors so far presented in the case are deteriorating image of the town. And so far any other, short-term rentals that have been here for more than just since November of this year, right? So it's difficult for me to, I know why people are saying it, but I have Airbnb, I'm in the same zoning as people from Strand on my street, West Fifth Street, and we have Airbnb planning to open anytime, right? So like, it's the same short-term rental first home definition, right? So are we banning that as well? This Airbnbs have existed forever, it's the same zoning. So that's not being mentioned at all, right? So those are the things that I would like us to see comprehensively addressed if we're gonna address short-term rentals. And I agree with what you guys are saying previously about regulating it, but my question is, I guess, aren't we already? Like the noise, isn't it already part of entire cities,
You're still governed by the rules of the city, the laws of the city. You can put other limitations on the use, for example. And I'm not suggesting this, I don't need a policy, but you could say, we're gonna have X number of rental licenses. And then they could be done for that. You could, and if they have to register and there has to be an emergency contact, it's almost limitless, right? You gotta have, come up with a special license and deposit. There's 1,000 things you could do to regulate that. I'm not here to say what that is, but Chris, am I helping you or am I hurting you by throwing these things out there? But to your very specific legal question, they still have to follow the noise ordinance, they still have to follow the parking, and they still have to do everything else everybody in town does when they're here.
And I walked there the other day just to see the parking issue. It's really narrow. It's always been narrow. But the neighbors are using 2 SUVs, similar size that use them pretty wide. So like, that to me is, like.
Right now, you have to have 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, there are 2 available on the other side.
There are 2. The question is, that's another thing you could regulate.
Yes.
You can say you need 1 parking, you need 3, that's my point.
But a lot of
So
places don't even have the ability.
Right, but that's precisely my point.
For example, one of the people in public comments said tonight that the Terry House, which is probably our largest B&B in town, has parking. It does not. They park on the guests park on the street. So
these are all things that, unfortunately, you guys get so big, figure out. I think you're looking for a recommendation based upon the comments. I didn't interrupt you there. Based upon the comments, those are the kind of things that maybe the planning commission could make a recommendation on. That I'm gonna say additional requirements. And I don't mean to take this over, but I didn't know if any other members of council kind of felt the same.
I just wanted to just wrap up my recommendation there is, I don't know if it's appropriate, and that's what I kind of alluded earlier. If this goes under comprehensive plan review as other things that we're talking about in our city, so that we're efficiently using resources of planning commission and not saying, review this for us, but also we're having this home plan review coming up where this could be potentially properly addressed. So I will look at you to tell me.
I'll put these 2
I think,
together. I'll
Yeah.
put these 2 together.
Norman, I think that they both fall under the scope of the planning commission.
There's no doubt
Yeah,
that this,
yeah.
but home
I
plan
just
review
don't-
comes under their,
Right.
jurisdiction anyways, so, that's kind of where.
I don't know.
The thing that is looking at zoning, the number of apartments, all like that's a comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan, of course, law, is permitted unless authorized by the comprehensive. So we can't do that.
But that's exactly where my thought comes from, because ratio of how many units we should have should depend on what we have currently in our zoning in each of the zones in the city. So that's why I'm thinking that is a very timely conversation, because as you're understanding the new scope of the city, then you can say, this is appropriate, or this is filling a gap, responding to an issue that we have potentially for housing, or it's hurting the case. That is where.
You could combine them together, and I'm gonna say you can't. I think in my view, they're two separate issues, because I guarantee you the comprehensive plan doesn't talk about, I haven't read it, and I can't go swear to it, but doesn't talk about or address short-term rental from an ordinance that was in 1968.
Right, and I thought that, I saw the comp plan as being in sort of broader strokes than digging down into the details of how we should regulate Airbnbs.
Think of it this way. You have the federal constitution, right? You gotta follow the constitution, that's your big law. You have federal law, and you have state law, and you have local law. Comprehensive plan is like the municipality's land use constitution. That's from a case, H. Fletcher Brown Manson versus City of Bloomington, okay? So it's the constitution, so it's a broad, I love that. It's my thing. And so since it's the broader, this is more of a more specific piece as I see it. So while it might inform later conversations about the comprehensive plan update in some way, I would do the two separate. That's my preference, but I don't want to say.
No, I'm gonna finish with this one, sorry. I'm in full support of this, and I truly think it would be a great exercise for planning commission if appropriate. That's why I was going through all this exercise just to figure out where this fits best. There's an efficiency, but I'm in full support for this to be reviewed by planning, provide us, public space for this to occur, because clearly there's a lot of residents, providing opinion on both sides. So I think we should look into this because it is a nuance in our town.
There is a lot of support for this, well, first of all, you're saying, this
That's all,
is
yes.
not gonna affect currently existing, because they're kind of sort of grandfathered.
My recommendation is for you to do that.
Yeah, because there's litigation. So, but,
Well, for example, I heard from 6 people, I went back through my emails and counted them up, who live on the Strand, who support the idea of the B&Bs. They didn't want their names used at the meeting because they have to continue to live with their neighbors, and this is clearly a contentious issue. But, so, well, we heard from, probably at least from Strand residents, more who opposed it than supported it.
because the supporters are gonna really.
They didn't, it's not that there are no supporters. In terms of your ratio of rentals and short-term rentals, that could be addressed by putting a limit on the number of licenses we would grant.
Yeah.
And that would sort of contain it without eliminating it. So that's another possibility for consideration by the planning commission.
There's a case on that, it's called the City of Winona. And if you do decide to go that route, have some findings that you're gonna need to see the department.
Okay, and I think quite a few years ago, we stayed at a B&B in Charleston, South Carolina, which is one of the cities they cite. And Charleston, of course, is a much more tourist-oriented town than we are. And we stayed in this lovely B&B right down near the river and so on. And the owner told us that they have some kind of a limit. So if they ceased to operate, they could not get their license back because, if the limit is 25 or 50 or whatever it is, somebody else is going to snatch up that license and they could not get it back.
Kind of like liquor license.
Well, there's also, sorry, I don't mean to add to the complication. One of the things you need to consider if you're gonna put a limit on this, or on the number, what do you do with the snowbirds? Rent for 6 months, go to Florida, right? They're an Airbnb for a period of time. This is a complex issue.
It is, and what constitutes the whole thing of distinguishing between Airbnb and other B&Bs is difficult. Airbnb is just an online platform for renting. There are, as Mr. Day said, there's VRBO, there's probably others that I'm not aware of. And, right, and most of the B&Bs, you reserve your room online with whatever platform they use, So just because they use this platform is not a definition of what kind of service they provide. So it gets,
In my view, you know, I think the planning commission definitely has a role, and I want to get input from them, but there's definitely a widening of the circle, but it's a widening of the circle, but it's not a punt. I understand that, I feel that I'm able to research and provide some guidance, and will not shy away from making a decision, educated decision in the best interest of all that are involved. I don't know what Councilman Day meant by registration, but I'm in full support of that. I've done some research, and in furtherance of the word registration, I've seen some municipalities that have asked hosts, if you will, on a registration form that they log with the city, identify what websites they are posting on. I've seen some municipalities carve out the issuance of licenses. So maybe it's not a year, maybe it's every 6 months and get renewed. Some other things that I've seen are limiting the number of days in a year in which they can be rented. So obviously, 365 days in a year, maybe they say this can only be rented for 200 days out of the year. Well, there's again, it's about districts, right? And I know we've had some conversation around permissible use, historic commercial versus historic residential. Right now, in my view of the code, it currently just allows these type of tourist homes in just those two zones. That's not right? Okay.
I don't think so, but there's a zoning map in your packet just with the section. I mean, historic residential is broader than the Strand. It goes all-
Yeah, I'm looking at the zoning and it says permissible use in historic residential and historic commercial. It's the planning comp plan here. So I say to say, I'm interested as to if there are potential other areas in the city that the planning commission may want to open up or have a suggestion for these types of businesses.
Exactly, can you have one in Washington Park?
Right.
Yeah, could you, yeah, R1, R2, R3, and I did not read through all of those to see if they're permissible in those zones.
Yeah.
They probably are, is my guess, but I can't swear to it because I didn't read them in depth.
And then also, I think there is an opportunity for the city to have some additional monitoring, control, oversight. So can we carve out a report that say, I don't know if it's the building code inspector or someone that, you know, just says, you know, on an annual basis or monthly basis, these are the Airbnbs, tourist homes that we have. We have 5 of them, just so we can track, you know, how many we have, are there any issues, et cetera.
Madam President, if I may, I would like to compile all the questions and topics that we discussed. And with Max, Chris and I, we can do a little bit of research and send it over to the planning commission with all of these ideas in mind and have them, you know, share the code sections and have them review and make recommendations.
So from a practical perspective, what's council's view on the recommendations back from the planning commission? There are 2 ways you can go about this. You take the recommendations, like they're gonna discuss it, then it's gonna end up in my lap to write an ordinance for whatever the discussions are, right? So we could do it that way and present you guys an ordinance. Way 1. Way 2, we could take the recommendations that they have, bring them back up to you guys, and then you guys could like kick them around and then we review.
I think that makes
I think that makes more sense, rather than you draft an ordinance and then we pick it apart and change this and add this and delete the other thing.
Got it. understand why I asked the question.
Yeah.
One other important distinction I would like to make again for the record. I'm in support of these in a controlled environment, one that is supported by the city, but also the local residents in the area. So, you know, my understanding is when someone applies for a liquor license or is going to open up a bar, for example, a certain notice goes out to residents within a certain area. I would like to build out an infrastructure to where if one is established, that a notice goes out to residents. So there is no concern about, I didn't know, I wasn't informed, and you do have an opportunity to voice your opinion either at a Board of Adjustment or a City Council meeting.
Okay, anything else?
Do we need a motion for that?
No.
No.
All right.
We're not passing anything, except we're sort of consolidating our ideas and what we're asking the planning commission to do. And then when they come back to us, then we'll have a further discussion and tighten things up and decide if we want an ordinance, what kind of issues we want to address in that ordinance, right?
Yes.
So
And one other item that I'd like, I'm
So we
sorry.
should just send questions to Anthony, so you can pull them all together?
Yeah, and I'll take what you just discussed as well. And one other item, when it comes back to you that I would like to discuss about it is, of course, like fee schedule and how we should establish that. That would be separate from.
Right.
Not sure if this, perhaps it was already mentioned, so ignore it. It would be great to be presented back with statistics. This would be great if planning sees it too, but I would like to see it as I'm looking through the evidence, you know, breakdown of who visits in the, you know, to what Councilperson Matter was saying, this is how many units we have, this is how many people visit over the last each year, age groups. Just so we know, like, reality versus what's being told in the meeting, just so we kind of say that. And I think, Chief, you could chime in with like any reports that have been submitted, that would be great too.
That take.
I think the owners would probably, you know.
They could give us.
Voluntarily, right?
Well,
Obviously, why not, right?
Sounds private-ish.
I understand, but at a minimum, we should be able to get incident data, right? I mean, that's something that Chief would have.
well,
sure,
yeah,
that-
we checked
yes.
if there's been no notice in the last 6 months at any B&B in town. Check
That would
that.
be great to know, yeah, that's exactly.
We did check that, but in terms of asking the owners to tell us how many nights was it rented and what age were the people and where did they come, I don't think that's a reasonable thing to ask.
What I do think is appropriate is for the city to see how we can potentially work with these business owners in regards to perhaps some marketing material, if you will, in their businesses or homes, where we're advertising our city, talking about our city, and if there's potentially some type of feedback card that we can construct to use, because we are a tourist city and we do care about what people think and feel and experience.
I make a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? Meeting's adjourned.
Before you put your for that.